welcome everybody again. Thanks to our technical team for pulling off yet another meeting by Zoom, and to the members of the public who've joined us in this regard. It's wonderful that we can be together this way. We of course wish we could all be together in that room on Santa Barbara Street, but soon, hopefully soon. So we're doing the right thing by staying home. And I just want to call to order the meeting of the Santa Barbara Board of Education on April 28th, 2020. The time I have is 6:38, and this is the opening. This is open session, and we will move to item C2, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Matsuoka, you've got the flag behind you, so you're the one.
Yes, I would encourage all of you to stay seated so we can see each other's faces, and I'll turn and face our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Now I will turn it over for our Spanish interpreter, Ms. Sophia.
Thank you, Board President. In order to provide language access, we will be providing simultaneous bidirectional interpretation in English and Spanish. If you are bilingual, you don't have to click on anything. If you are not bilingual in English and Spanish, you will have to select your language in order to hear the interpretation. If you are on a laptop or desktop, you will see a globe at the bottom right of your screen. Please click on the globe icon that says interpretation and select English. And those that speak Spanish will select Spanish. If you are on an iPad or a similar device, locate the 3-dot menu and select language interpretation, then select English. When it's your turn to speak, please remember to be loud and clear and speak at a moderate pace, as the interpreter will be interpreting simultaneously into the other language everything that you say. Esta reunión contará con interpretación simultánea bidireccional en inglés y en español. Si usted es bilingüe, no tiene que presionar nada. Si usted no es bilingüe, tendrá que elegir su idioma para escuchar la interpretación. Si está usando una computadora, verá un icono en la parte inferior de su pantalla a la derecha en forma de globo que dice interpretación. Haga clic ahí y seleccione español, Spanish. Si está usando un iPad o dispositivo parecido, localice el menú de 3 puntos, haga clic en donde dice Language Interpretation, interpretación de idiomas, y elija español, Spanish. Cuando sea su turno de hablar, por favor recuerde hablar con voz fuerte y clara y a un paso moderado, ya que la intérprete estará interpretando lo que usted diga simultáneamente al otro idioma. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have this even on this kind of technology, so I really appreciate it. So I'm going to then move to our item C5, which is announcement of closed session action. We have some good news to report in that we made 3 appointments. The board made 3 appointments of new staff. So I would read out the closed session action. 3 management appointments. The board approved the recommendation of James Koenig as the next principal of Santa Barbara Junior High starting July 1st, 2020. And this motion was made by Ms. Ford, seconded by Ms. Wendy Sims-Moten, and the vote was unanimous. The second action was the board approved the recommendation of Denise Granger as the next principal of Washington Elementary School starting July 1st, 2020. The motion was made by myself, seconded by Dr. Reed, and the vote was also unanimous. And lastly, the board approved Ariel Curry as elementary assistant principal for Washington and Franklin Elementary Schools starting July 1st as well. The motion was made by Dr. Reed, seconded by Ms. Sims-Moten, and the vote was 5-0 unanimous. So good news to report out of closed session. And now I move it to item C6, the superintendent's report. Mr. Matsuoka.
I'll share one brief story that I heard of, I think it was a week ago, and this came out of a work group that's starting to look at how to do graduations under these conditions. And it was a meeting led by Ms. Carey, and it was one of our ASB presidents that just shared this moment with all of the adults. I thought it was a great moment. He says, and basically he was telling the adults, okay, it's okay, it'll be all right. Look, this senior class was born in the shadow of 9/11 and is graduating from high school. during the COVID-19 pandemic. We're good. We got this. Isn't that a great perspective from our students? Boy, what a life that they have lived so far in 18 years, the experiences that they've had. And boy, we will be looking to this generation in the future to solve the problems that we seem to continue to hand off to the next generation. So that's why we're in this business of education, because kids give us hope. So thought I'd pass that story along. We wish our best to our seniors. We know we're going to miss being able to celebrate together, but know that there are a lot of people starting to plan alternative celebrations. So news will come out soon. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka. I appreciate that. So then I'm going to move it on to the next item, which is board comments and correspondence. Any of our board members have any correspondence or comments they'd like to share? Ms. Ford.
Thank you so much. As some of you know, but I'm hoping all of you will now know that Isla Vista Youth Project's LEAP Awards were recently canceled from last week. And one of the 2 honorees was Wendy Sims Moten. And in hopes that that ceremony will be rescheduled so we can celebrate appropriately, at least today, I would like to just recognize this wonderful achievement by Miss Sims Moten. Congratulations.
Yay.
And I also just wanted to say that I recognize how difficult these times have been, and trying, as I mentioned last time, to stay on top of all of the unfolding that we have in the state. And today, the LAUSD superintendent, Austin Buettner, said that they will not reopen their campuses without widespread coronavirus testing and contact tracing, which might be something that isn't very knowledgeable or clear to lots of people, but the public health department is always wandering and following up on contact tracing. And so I thought this was super interesting. And he said, we just don't want our schools to become the Petri dishes that spread this virus to our communities. So with that, I know that there's still great uncertainty, but I have tremendous gratitude, respect, and admiration to our parents, our teachers, our students, our staff, our leaders, for just giving it their best shot every day during this difficult time. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. I think Dr. Reed, you had your hand up. Yep.
Sure, yeah. I also wanted to acknowledge Ms. Sims Moten. I was looking forward to that lunch today, darn it. So we'll have to bought my ticket and all that. So it's exciting and very proud of you. And again, I just wanted to acknowledge all the work that's being done by our district staff and our principals, our teachers and students and families, and providing the support for our students. The families are really having to take on the role of teachers and support their own children while attempting to work at the same time, and just in this new normal, which I know that's the new term, but it kind of, I don't know. It's kind of strange, the new normal. I did want to share a story though. As Director of Education Programs at Antioch University, we have been faced with how to support our teach candidates as they navigate this new normal. And a key concept that my student teachers have shared was how important having strong relationships with the children were, with the students. And that they were so thankful that this last quarter, they had the opportunity to really get to know the students before they moved into remote learning. And they realized that it is those relationships that are helping the students navigate this situation. And what I noticed, what many shared actually in my class last Friday, was the great work that teachers are doing as they navigate these difficult waters, but that they're always striving to put the students first. And I think the mental health of our students is crucial, and these relationships and keeping these relationships as a key factor is so important during these difficult times. So it was really wonderful to hear that the students that are in these classroom settings are really proud of the work that our teachers are doing and striving to do. So I really want to do a shout out again to our classroom teachers and for all they are doing for our students, while oftentimes teaching their own children at the same time. And I want to thank them for their time. You're working around the clock, I know, preparing in these new environments, but most importantly, your willingness to continue to really cherish and build those relationships with your students. And I just find it so commendable and so important. So thank you to all the students, our teachers, for the great work you are doing.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Ms. Sims Moton.
Yes, well, thank you, Ms. Ford and Dr. Reed for those comments with regards to my ward. You can't really see me turning a different color, but I am. So, so thank you very much for that. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get together and celebrate that in the near future. But I also wanted to just share, just thank you to everyone that is here and just stepping in and stepping up. And I just wanted to share a little bit of what First Five had wrote out to our families and our friends of First Five, and just parents who are coping every day just to kind of get up and deal with things that they haven't been dealing with, and that is dealing with them every day. And I just shared was that this time in history is teaching us lessons about what it is, what's essential. And our focus, our skills, and our beliefs are being tested in so many different ways, yet we still rise. And even the time of this uncertainty, there are incredible stories such as the one that Dr. Reed have shared, and we all have shared, of heroism on our frontline responders, our teachers, and the outpouring concern for others and random acts of kindness. Willingness to step in when needed shows the capacity to be our best selves. And finally, I hope at First Five and around in the district that we here in this community, it is that this human change of behavior will continue well past this latest crisis, and that we continue to rise, our humanity continues to rise. So I just wanted to say thank you and to share those few words.
Thank you, Ms. Sims Moton. Nicely said. I just want to make sure Ms. Munoz, I don't see her. I have a comment myself, but
yeah, she's still trying to get in. She's going to restart. Hopefully that helps with
okay.
her.
All right. Well, we will. Let's fingers crossed that she gets in. So I just wanted to thank you. A lot of us were on this same Zoom on Thursday for a special board meeting, and I just wanted to give an update to the superintendent search during my board comments. It's more good news. So much has been put on pause, but that search is robust and continues. We had a fantastic meeting on Thursday in closed session, reviewing resumes really for the first time, digging in. And I just wanted to report out to the public and to the staff and to teachers that we're in great shape moving forward with a lot of great, excellent candidates, as much as we would have hoped for without a pandemic keeping people where they are. And so it's encouraging is the most appropriate word I can say for it. And we're now moving in to sort of a semi-finalist pool after a very healthy first round of applicants, about pretty much as much as one would have, the search firm would have hoped without the circumstances that we're all under. So we're moving forward. We're meeting regularly. Our next special meeting is May 7th, and that again will be closed session. And just to explain to the public, we do most of this in open session, but now when we get to the phase where we're actually reviewing resumes, the Brown Act demonstrates that we can be in closed session, or we should be in closed session, obviously, for the nature of personnel and issues like that. So our next meeting will be May 7th. And again, we're just encouraged and moving forward and on track to have a new appointed superintendent by May 30th. So that's it for me. And I just want to thank the fellow board members. I'm sorry that Ms. Munoz is still trying to get in, but hopefully she'll join us as soon as she can. So I want to close out that agenda item and move to C8 for our public comments on non-agenda matters. And I'll turn that over to the extremely hardworking Ms. Trujillo, who's helped us with so many technical challenges here in the last several weeks.
Thank you, President Capps. Good evening, board members. We have two requests to speak tonight for this item, and we have Mr. Mike Barnick. Mr. Barnick, you can go ahead and
Yes.
begin.
Okay, my name is Mike Barnick. I have a daughter at San Marcos High School. She's a sophomore. And I just wanted to kind of let you know what my thoughts are in this hard time. I think that the IT staff you have has done a great job. They should continue to get some credit for that. What I'd like for the first thing is if you could create a subscribed email list so we don't have to surf through the website on a certain day to get the agendas. If we could subscribe, it'd be nice just to get them in the email. I think this would help people, open up people to participate a little more. They get a reminder. The second part is, as I started looking at the CAASPP, the California Assessment of Student Performance and Progress, which I guess is how our school district is measured, I'm looking at all grades for last year. 55% of the students failed math. They didn't meet expectations. 45% of the students didn't meet expectations for English and language arts. And I got to say, this is, I couldn't believe it. I think it's kind of depressing to see that in this neighborhood, we don't have the resources that we need to make this happen. I think it's kind of, I don't know, maybe epic fail. And this looks bad on the people who are in charge of making this, getting these kids out of school. They're not going to be able to graduate and count change at McDonald's even. And this looks bad on, I think it looks bad on the board, the administration, and the community. So what I'd like to ask the board to do is make the academic performance improvement a priority, and every meeting have a permanent agenda item where administration can tell us what they're doing to meet the goals of raising these grades. And I think this is something we need to continue doing, and we need to do it immediately, because this whole quarter is going to be a waste. And we're not going to be able to do anything to make up for this next year if we're not prepared now. So with that said, I hope you will take my recommendation to heart and see if we can move forward with something concrete. Thank you.
Thank you. Board, next we have Mr. John Morris, and I'm going to give him a call. One moment. Hi, Mr. Morris. You are next to speak to the board. You have 3 minutes, and I will give you a 30-second warning. You can begin.
Good evening. My name is John Morris. I'm a member of Fair Education of Santa Barbara and a practicing attorney. During the school board meeting of August 7, Superintendent Matsuoka represented to this board that the California Education Code requires superintendents to be retained under contract. He suggested that members of the general public suggesting at-will employment for Sean Carey and John Vecchio were misinformed. Specifically, he stated, and I quote, "It is required by Ed Code that we have assistant superintendents serve under their own individual contracts," end quote. He further stated, "We have to have contracts in place for assistant superintendents. That is explicitly stated in Ed Code," end quote. Those representations were made at the public conference and with no opportunity for anyone to respond. After researching the issue, I can state with reasonable certainty that those representations are false. James Banker sent an email to Mr. Matsuoka requesting a citation to the Ed Code section that is required upon. Counsel for the district, Grace Price, responded to that query and cited Education Code section 35031. That section states that superintendents and assistant superintendents may be elected for a year, term up to 4 years. However, nothing in that section requires that they be employed under a contract. Education Code section 17411 specifically requires contracts for superintendents and assistant superintendents, but only for education for community colleges. There is no conflict of section between secondary schools. But standard rules of statutory construction when the legislature provides a specific requirement for community colleges and not for secondary schools, it is presumed that no such requirement is intended for secondary. As a member of the general public, I feel comfort being talked down to my government officials, especially when what they say is false. If Mr. Montalvo or any
30
other
seconds.
employee thinks that fair education will accept such representations at face value, we do not call them out. They're a mistake.
Thank you. President Capps, that concludes public comment for this item.
Thank you so much. Thanks to our members of the public. Again, for those who are joining us on Zoom. And we will then move to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. Do my board members have any items that they would, I'm sorry, I moved ahead of the donations. Item DA, which is the acceptance of donations. I need a motion.
I move with gratitude to accept the donation presented for us today.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thanks so much. Now on to the consent agenda, and repeating my question, do any board members have any items in the consent agenda, items E 1 through 12 that they would like to pull? Okay, oh good. Rose, Ms. Munoz, welcome. Sorry that took a long time. Okay, seeing none, we will move. We need a motion to pass the consent agenda. Ms. Ford.
Sorry.
You-
Calling on someone-
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you correctly.
Were you calling on someone else?
No, I'm calling on you. I just couldn't quite hear you, but thanks. We have a motion for approval of the consent.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Excellent.
I second.
Dr. Reed, we got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to the next agenda item, which is our action agenda, which is item F1. Dr. Ramirez, you're on deck here for the request for the adoption of the comprehensive plan for multilingual pathways.
Hi, good evening, board. Glad to be with you. Look at my notes here. All right. I wanted to, first and foremost, thank all of you, obviously, for continuing to make the time for your diligent effort. Ms. Capps, thank you very much for your facilitation. I wanted to just take this moment to also acknowledge that there will be a couple of us who will be presenting on this item, Ms. Carrie and Ms. Maria Larios Horton. We've also invited three of our very important partners in this project. By way of introducing our partners, consultants on this project, I'd like to start by introducing Ms. Francisca Sanchez. Ms. Sanchez has been before the board on other occasions. She comes with a lot of executive experience in multiple school districts and school systems, including San Francisco Unified, and now runs her own practice, provocative practice. And if she can just pop in and introduce herself really quickly.
Thank you. I'm Francisca Sanchez. I'm not sure if you're able to see me or hear me.
Yes, we are, Francisca.
Okay, great. I just want to thank the board for the opportunity to be able to join you this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sanchez. I wanted to also introduce Ms. Rosa Molina, who, as the slide deck now shows, or not now shows, but is the Executive Director for the Association of Two-Way and Dual Language Education, ATDLE. So Ms. Molina, if you can introduce yourself there as well.
Yes, good evening, board. Thank you for allowing us a couple minutes to review the work that we have been engaged in for the last 6 months in the implementation of not only a comprehensive plan, but also the development of a dual language immersion pathway for Santa Barbara City Schools. This is work that's very close and dear to my heart, and I'm excited about talking about it with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. And finally, we also wanted to introduce or reintroduce a very valued member of our team, Ms. Paula Sevilla, who most recently was a teacher for Adelante Charter, but also is a professor at UCSB. So Ms. Sevilla, if you can also introduce yourself.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Paula Sevilla, and I have had the great pleasure of working on this project for most of a year now. And I'm grateful to the district for the opportunity, and I am grateful to see what will happen as we go ahead, hopefully. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, I wanted to identify just a few things. Ms. Sevilla had mentioned, and I think it really bears repeating, that almost a year ago now to the date, or in fact, it has been a year now, we brought before you as a board, a plan to develop a really robust process that would include multiple stakeholders, engage the community internally, externally, and be able to bring before you a roadmap for how we would move forward in our work in supporting our emergent multilingual students. I wanted to just very briefly review some of the needs and major shifts that got us to this point. You see them there listed. This isn't an exhaustive list, but it's a very important one. Number one, we wanted to make sure that we came to this work from a place of really the right motivational and philosophical drivers. Much has shifted in our broader state context, locally as well, but speaking broadly to state initiatives, you see them largely enumerated there on the left. We have developed as a state, most recently, a California English Learner Roadmap. We have had Proposition 58 passed by our voters at quite a high percentage, which now allows us to fully teach in multiple languages. We've had the development and the onboarding of the State Seal of Biliteracy. And we have this broad, ambitious goal really spelled out in Global California that raises the challenge for all schools to develop biliterate, multiliterate, and students, and for an economy, a world, a society that is not only for the here and now, but for the future as well. We also have some local drivers, very important ones. Our DLAC, this is a group now of multiple generations of parents that have wanted to set forward recommendations about developing a really comprehensive and robust plan to ensure that our emergent multilingual students are really at the heart of decision-making in our district, in our school communities. And I think that's something that I just wanted to expand upon, because I really want to take this moment to recognize the shifts that have occurred just in the time that I've been in the district, and they've been plenty. And I think that they have gotten us closer and closer to ensuring that we view our students not for the deficits, not for the things that they are not yet able to do, but rather all of their strengths, personal, cultural, and otherwise, that they bring to this work. And it's really been the parents that have been at the forefront, advocating not just for their own children, but for children of their neighbors, of their own family members, of parents who couldn't show up to those meetings because of work commitments or life commitments. And they've stuck with us. Many of them are with us now. And so it's a tremendous moment to be able to move in this direction. Our achievement outcomes beg a lot of questions, and not the least of which is, how can we ensure that we are really centered and grounded upon students and their needs? And so what you see are that we have tried to move forward with the appropriate drivers, with the appropriate guidance at all levels, state and local. And then just to conclude, one last point. We have made many concerted efforts to talk about and move toward equity and be able to be more equitable in our decisions and in how we arrive at them. But I would propose to the board that this is an opportunity to really operationalize fully and be very, very clear and decisive about what equity really means for us moving forward. And I think this plan achieves two very important things. It's both aspirational and very visionary, but it's also very practical in that it lays out the functional steps that we need to take together as a district community to ensure that the outcomes that our students are experiencing today aren't the outcomes that they will experience in future years. So I just wanted to represent that broad introduction to this plan, to its work, to its proposed, to its purpose, and be able to also commend those who have come along the way and have made things possible for us.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. So good evening, President Capps, members of the board. The plan before you tonight is designed to guide our district in three very important aspects of multilingual education. First, the plan contains programmatic guidelines related to the various multilingual pathways, including but not limited to dual language immersion, world languages for our secondary schools, and English language development. Secondly, we know that programs alone are not enough, that for programs to justly serve our students, especially our emergent multilingual students, we also need culturally and linguistically sustaining learning environments for students to thrive, whether those are virtual or physical classrooms. Finally, no plan is complete without attending to our diverse families and ensuring we are partnering with them in the most effective manner as we work to align our practices to Dr. Karen Mapp's dual capacity building framework for family school partnerships. Here we see our timeline once again, and as you can see, and as mentioned by Dr. Ramirez, it has taken a year to develop this plan. In April of last year, this board approved the development of this plan, and since that approval, we have been able to bring you 3 updates and 1 board study session. We are very thankful for the support of our consultant, Francisca Sanchez, and will now ask her to unmute and to share a bit about our process for developing this plan. Francisca?
Thank you. So the full process of designing something transformative involves 5 major phases. At the center, what we have what we know about powerful and sustainable organizational development and transformation, as well as in our case here, the California English Learner Roadmap, because that does set the state policy for what needs to happen for the education of emergent multilinguals. The process starts with the district leadership taking a stand and defining who we are as a district, what we stand for. Then we engage our community in a very broad way in the design of some key recommendations for action organized around a set of powerful strategic goals. We work with our stakeholders to then bring what is before you today, this plan. And then the third major phase here is to do the actual planning for implementation of the goals and recommendations in the plan. So this is the how-to guide, when we do what, who does it, which resources we use, and so forth. The final 2 phases, which were not included in our initial contract, are phases around how we build in these strategies and structures that will allow us to actually do the work, to do the implementation in a way that's most efficient and effective, and that we build in as well these reflection, organizational reflection processes that will make us accountable for doing what we said we were going to do and doing it in a way that provides powerful impact. So that's the general process. In terms of what we have done and will be doing here in the district, it's really working across those first 3 planning and design phases. First, we assess the current state of emerging multilingual students in the district, and this included reviewing current plans, the data that were available to us, conducting interviews, student focus groups, and community forums to make sure that we could create an accurate snapshot of the state of the district in this moment with regard to our students. And it also served the purpose of surfacing some of the student and staff and community visions for what should be in place. Second, we worked with the district leadership to envision the future that we want for our students and to establish some essential elements that guide the design of the plan. Third, we convened the community and other stakeholders over several months in 5 formal meetings so that they could provide input to the design of this plan. And based on that vision that has been articulated by the district leadership. So by integrating the results from the meetings with the leadership and the stakeholders, we developed this plan that's before you now. And it's important for you to know that this plan is based on 4 big pieces. First, the assessment of current state. Secondly, the desired future that we've envisioned. Third, the contributions of our stakeholders. Fourth, the ideas that are already contained in other relevant plans, such as LCAP and the other plans that we have in place in the district. And then fourth, of course, we wanted to make sure that we ran it through the filter of the relevant research and expertise so that it was a sound plan. The fourth thing that we're doing is actually what we're doing today. We're asking for formal approval of the plan. And once we have that approval, we will be sharing the plan widely with staff and other stakeholders in the community. And fifth, and still to come, is to develop common sense work plans that will drive the implementation of the Meta plan and that will specify the benchmarks and metrics that you'll be able to rely on to know with some certainty that we're being successful and that we're having the impact that we want to have. So our intention was to actually convene a group of staff to help design those implementation plans, those action plans, actually starting today. But given the COVID-19 status, we are now having to rethink that. And we know this needs to happen. We just don't know if it's going to be possible to do it face-to-face or if it will need to be done in a virtual setting of some kind. So that's just a quick update of the overall process or framework that we used, and then the major pieces of work that we've done to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisca. We've mentioned on several occasions that our stakeholder input was significant. We're very grateful for the many ideas and contributions by this very committed group of stakeholders. Without their input, this plan would not be as robust and representative of the varying ideologies, hopes, and aspirations contained within. We will continue, as Francisca mentioned, to engage these stakeholders to the degree possible as we begin the next phase of action planning for implementation should you approve and adopt this plan. I'd like to share with you some important things about our plan. First and foremost, I'd like you to note the cover of our plan. On the cover of the plan is Miss Isabela Rain Marquez, a first grader at Adams Elementary in Miss Harris' class. Her family allowed me to take this picture while she played Loteria at the Adams Dia de los Muertos celebration last November. We're thankful for her family allowing us to use her image for our cover. Secondly, of note, this plan is comprehensive. A total of 190 pages, 110 pages devoted to the plan itself with 80 pages of appendices. I think also important to note or reiterate, as Francisca already did, that there are 7 pages of references that speak to the importance of research in the writing of this plan. When scanning the table of contents, you'll note that most of the sections have already been shared with you in previous board updates. We know that this plan is robust and that we need to create documents that are digestible for different audiences. So that will definitely be our next step as should the board adopt this plan. The plan, as Francisca mentioned, is just a plan. A plan requires commitment to action. So I will now turn it over to Ms. Sean Carey, who will share a little bit about the plans moving forward, again, should this plan be approved.
Good evening, board and community. Thank you for having me to speak on Meta. I'm pleased to close out this presentation with something that might be tempting to feel like it's anticlimactic, but really it's, I want to just echo what you hear in terms of the plan itself being characterized as robust, comprehensive, I would even say exhaustive, because when it comes to planning to support the development of really high quality multilingual pathways, we realize that really does then call into scrutiny how we do business in general and the foundations of how we develop any pathways. And so, as you can note from the organization of the plan, there are lots of domains in which we have very clearly delineated action steps and goals. But when it comes to fleshing those out and doing the kind of action planning that we know is needed to execute successfully on goals of as critical nature as we have here, we know that many of these goals will require a multi-year effort and that some will take some priority over others. And so all of that is knowledge that we bring to the action planning phase. We're very eager to get to the action phase, but we feel very well equipped with the strong foundation, as Francisca described, in terms of the process that we've undertaken to get to this point, so that when we do act, we'll be standing on solid ground. Yes, we've had to delay and think a little differently about how to move forward with action planning, but move forward we shall. And we will have the eye, as you see here in the slide, we will make sure that we continue to have that eye on how the Meta plan does in fact overlap with other very impactful and high stakes and high visibility plans that our district puts forward, including our vision for learning, our instructional vision, as well as our LCAP. The Meta plan is aligned with our district's core values and mission. And so with an eye to all those things, we'll be bringing all of that to the action planning, the concrete action planning moving forward. Again, because it's so comprehensive and really to support effective pathways, we need efforts from all corners of our organization. We also will rely on resources from all corners of our organization. And in terms of resources, I do mean resources in terms of people, time, energy, and money and dollars. So you will be able to see those you and the public will be able to see those kinds of details as we flesh out our action plans associated with the overall Meta goals, overarching goals. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers. Is the presentation concluded?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm asking because I neglected to let our public speakers, we do have several public comment, which is fine to do it in this order, but definitely we need to hear public comment before the board interacts and asks questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hio. I would say that thank you so much. We have had many updates about this, including a study session. So I ask our speakers, because we've heard again, this is a robust way in which we've addressed this issue. If you could be as specific as possible in your comments, that would be really helpful at this stage of where we are. Mr. Hio.
Thank you, President Capps. We have 10 speakers for this item, and I will begin with Maria Jose Aragon. Ms. Aragon, you can go ahead and start.
Good evening, members of the board and the public. I am Maria Jose Aragon. I am Director of Instruction for the Skills Program at UCSB, where I also earned my doctorate in education. I also serve on the board of directors at Adelante Charter School. So I was fortunate enough to be a part of the stakeholders group and to witness firsthand the very thoughtful and participatory process that led to the creation of this proposal. This plan undoubtedly represents a big change, but it really builds on the many strengths of our students, families, teachers, staff, and administrators. It expands opportunities for all of our students, preparing them to be global citizens, and it addresses longstanding inequities within our school system. From a research perspective, I just wanted to take the opportunity to stress that we have seen again and again the many benefits of learning another language for our students, including cognitive, socio-emotional, and economic advantages, as well as increased social and cultural competencies. For our emergent bilingual learners and students of color, having access to learning that builds on their cultural and linguistic expertise can have really powerful long-term effects. We have to look no further than schools in our own communities, such as Adelante, where students' lives have been transformed through access to culturally and linguistically sustaining education. In addition, as has already been noted, this plan is aligned with policies and programs in our state that similarly seek to offer all students access to quality education and are based on current research on language learning, such as the English Learner Roadmap and the field of biliteracy. Because of all this, I just want to stress today that META is not only a step in the right direction for all of us, but that it truly embodies the kind of future we should all be working towards in the school district. So I want to really thank everybody who has been a part of this process for putting together such a, as everybody has noted, comprehensive and impactful plan. So thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sheridan Rosenberg, and I'm going to call her one moment.
And just to clarify for everyone, these are speakers who are speaking on both agenda items F1 and F2. So we're combining them given the nature of the topic.
Hi, Sandra, can you hear me?
Yes, Sheridan, you have 3 minutes, and I'm going to give you a 30-second warning. You can begin.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I've read through the materials, and I have a lot of concerns. First of all, I attended an LCAP meeting with Moni DeWitt, and we were asked to leave, and LCAP is really designed to have lots of community input. So I'm hearing a lot about stakeholders and community input, and yet I don't know that people who've wanted to be a part of this have really been allowed to have a voice. The second thing is, it's my understanding that LCAP funds, I don't know how much of the LCAP funds are going to be used for this, but I think you should take a pause on voting for this and take a deeper look into this. The second thing is I'm very concerned that if you're using this model at Adelante, I know Adelante scores are appalling. So I don't know that we want to replicate this in the district. I saw that you're going to be setting this up at McKinley. It's my understanding that people can't necessarily engage in interdistrict transfers anymore in elementary school. I don't know if that's true or not, but for those families that are McKinley and do not want their children as part of the dual immersion program, will they be given an opportunity to move their kids into a different school? And then lastly, you know, the mission statement that you now have is a world that is yet to be created. And I think there are certain realities about the world that we live in now that is here, that's tangible, that's real, that's based factually on the fact that English is the international language of business. It is the international language of banking and finance. It's also the international language of aviation, of maritime, of science and academia, of diplomacy, and of online business, of tech. And I think that the real focus should be almost in a crisis intervention way, because we know that we are basically a failing school district, is rather than focus on this sort of lofty, very sort of idealistic meta program, focus on intervening with literacy, with English immersion, and bring these kids up. Strive for excellence instead of equity that's at the bottom. Bring everybody up to
30
excellence.
seconds.
And the only way they're going to have any kind of chance to have a good life professionally, to have options and doors open to them here or globally, is to be absolutely fluent, articulate, and literate in English. And you know, and I think that you need to focus entirely on this, on that, and especially in a district that's just underwater financially, by in millions of dollars underwater. We should be financing this right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Yanet Mendoza, and I will give her a call. Hi, Janet. This is Sandra. I'm calling from the district, and your turn to speak to the board. You have 3 minutes, and I will give you a 30-second warning. You may begin.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, school board members. My name is Jeanette Mendoza, and so I just want to share a little bit of my story. And I'm basically speaking up for the children that the parents and their family members only speak Spanish at home, and they don't have any other influence outside of the school to practice their English. And I have lived here in Santa Barbara since December 2001 when I arrived from Mexico. I wish to tell my story and tell you why I am opposing to the bilingual education programs you are proposing. When I first came to this country, I was 13 years old and I spoke no English. I was enrolled at La Colina Junior High School in the 8th grade. All of my classes and textbooks were in English. My teachers spoke only English, and so did my friends. In this environment, I learned English very fast, and everyone around me was very happy with my improvement. After graduating from La Colina, I attended San Marcos High School and was classified as an English learner, and most of my classmates spoke only Spanish. In the first 2 years, most of my classes and textbooks were in Spanish. During the next 2 years, I spoke only Spanish almost all of the time in schools and at home. This had a very bad impact on my English learning and my schooling overall. After 4 years at San Marcos, I was only able to speak to English 10. When I graduated, I had been immersed in English. Had I been immersed in English, this would have made a big difference in my future. I do not want my children and my friends' children to be held back as I was. Based on my experience, I am very much opposed to the concept of bilingual education. The earlier children start learning English, the easier it will be, and this will enable them to fully participate as citizens in an English-speaking environment. I am very much in favor of children speaking two languages, and there is nothing wrong with having them speak Spanish at home. And the important thing is that they learn English at school and learn to read and write English early. Immersion in English is crucial. Once they learn to read in English, it will be easy for them to read in Spanish. Except for a few letters, the letters sound the same in both languages. For the sake of our children, I urge you to rethink the whole
30
concept
seconds.
of dual language learning. The longer you keep kids from learning English, the harder it will be, and for some, it will be impossible. As a Hispanic parent, I would like children to be proficient in both English and Spanish, and I would like for them to learn English beginning in kindergarten. I also would like them to learn to read and write in English. I do not want them held back in English as I was, and thereby limited in their career choices. Thank you for your time, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Elvira Hernandez, and I will give her a call. If you can turn off your devices, that would be great. You may begin.
Yes. I'm actually, yes. Is that better?
Yes, perfect. Go ahead.
Great. Hi, I just wanted to talk regarding the new, I guess, the new programs that are trying to be put at the McKinley School, as well as, you know, just the META program. I'm not quite familiar. I went to a couple of meetings. I was not quite sure. I was really confused about the information I was giving, but I don't think we are in the position of trying to put new programs when our current programs are not working, they're messed up, and the kids are not getting the best advantage of this. So I just want to remind you all that your decisions affect our children's future, and we must start by making sure that our kids are set up for success, successful academic years. And this, I don't see it how it can actually help. Actually, I feel like we need to be helping our kids learning how to read English. That's what they need. They need the support, that additional support, so they learn how to read English so that they can be successful, because everything starts right in kindergarten and first grade, second grade. So I personally feel that McKinley students would benefit so much if they had those resources. to learn how to read English. And because that's the biggest problem that the students are facing. They are not successful in school because they don't know how to read. And so it's not about putting a new program that is going to teach them how to read in Spanish or give them Spanish, you know, information. It's like really taking the time to evaluate the programs that you currently guys have, and really seeing, okay, is this working and why is it not working, instead of just pushing another program. Especially in McKinley School, I feel like it's a very vulnerable school that they don't need to be your guinea pigs really to try this program on them. I think they need the help that they can do. And really, once you guys have really set your programs to be successful, it will show on the kids' test scores. It will show on the kids' academic performances. And only then you can say, okay, now let's try this new program in there.
30 seconds.
You know, a multilingual. So I really feel that you guys are, I don't know what the behind agenda in this program is, but I'm really hurt to hear that this is what you guys are trying to do. I don't think it's the right way. And I am an English, Spanish speaker, also bilingual person. And so I just don't think that this is the right way to go. So I don't know if this makes a difference in your guys' opinion and what you guys are going to vote today. But I hope that.
Thank you.
I hope that you guys take this in consideration.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Next, we have Alma Rangel, and I want to remind everyone to put it on English channel to hear the interpretation. I'm going to give her a call. Le vamos a dar 3 minutos y yo le diré cuando tenga 30 segundos para terminar. Puede apagar sus... Ok, puede empezar.
Gracias. Buenas noches a todos los miembros del Consejo, Superintendente Matsuoka, especialistas y comunidad. Mi nombre es Alma Rangel y soy miembro del Comité DILAC. Tengo una estudiante en la Escuela Roosevelt y como miembro del Comité DILAC y madre de una estudiante, soy parte interesada en el desarrollo del Plan Meta y por lo tanto me gustaría compartir estos comentarios con ustedes. Las lenguas son parte del patrimonio cultural de la humanidad según la Organización de las Naciones Unidas para la Educación, la Ciencia y la Cultura, UNESCO. Sin embargo, se encuentran amenazadas, pues todos los días disminuyen sus hablantes. De ahí la importancia del multilingüismo. ¿Por qué es importante llevar un plan como guía para nuestro distrito? Ya que durante años hemos perdido la valiosa oportunidad de aprovechar esta oportunidad de realizar una verdadera integración cultural entre nuestros estudiantes, en donde todos aprendamos de todos y se puede enriquecer en este mundo que cada día se exige más herramientas para entender un pensamiento multicultural y global. El plan desarrollado es muy valioso, pues va más allá de enseñar un segundo idioma. En realidad, abrirá nuevas puertas de conocimiento sin perder el inglés. Los estudios y aplicación de estos programas en otros lugares nos indican el enorme beneficio y éxito para los estudiantes. Es por eso que agradecemos sus esfuerzos y disponibilidad para que esto se pueda realizar. Los padres estamos muy contentos con este avance y este plan que nos guiará hacia un nuevo mundo, nuevas competencias para nuestros estudiantes. Es muy importante para nosotros poder continuar y aplicar este plan a la brevedad. Es por esto que esta noche pedimos su apoyo. Muchas gracias.
Gracias. Adiós. Board, next we have Laura Gómez, and I will give her a call. Sí, buenas tardes, señora Laura. Habla Sandra y es su turno de hablar con el consejo. Tiene 3 minutos para hablar y yo le voy a dar, le diré cuando falten 30 segundos.
Gracias.
Puede empezar.
Buenas noches, miembros del Consejo, Superintendente Matsuoka y comunidad. Mi nombre es Laura Gómez,
Soy miembro del comité DILAC y tengo una estudiante en Dos Pueblos High School. Nosotros estamos convencidos de que los programas de doble inmersión lingüística son buenos para nuestra comunidad local y global, porque fomentan un ambiente positivo, donde las familias se sienten cómodas e incluidas para participar y desarrollar mayor comunicación con las escuelas. A nuestros estudiantes les da confianza y certeza de ver que su primer idioma es importante y muy beneficioso, que les da la oportunidad de mostrar y desarrollar sus fortalezas. Y a su vez, les abre más oportunidades en el ámbito social y laboral. Como parte interesada, he seguido el proceso en la formación del Plan Meta y hoy me siento muy optimista de que sea aprobado, pues es el único distrito en el condado que aún no tiene implementado un programa de doble inmersión lingüística. Gracias por su apoyo y por el tiempo que nos dan para expresarles nuestras necesidades.
Gracias. Okay, next we have Sergio Naveda, and I will give him a call. Buenas tardes, señor Naveda. Es su turno de hablar con el consejo. Tiene 3 minutos.
¿Sí, me oyes bien?
Sí, se le escucha bien. Le voy a dar 30 segundos cuando le falten. Ok, puede empezar.
Muy buenas tardes. Me da mucho gusto volverlos a saludar y saber que pues todo el mundo está muy bien. La tecnología nos acerca, pero yo lo que quiero realmente es agradecerles profundamente el haber hecho esto realidad hace 2 años. Empezamos con una idea y hoy pues es todo un completo concepto ya ideado y trabajado. Pero hay algo muy importante, no nos acostumbremos a la tecnología. Este es muy importante, como en este caso, que mi voz puede ser traducida al inglés. No nos acostumbremos porque la realidad, hoy la podemos ver en este planeta, que nos está uniendo todas las voces de todos los idiomas. Y tan solo les quiero recordar que este proyecto no es en estricto rigor para nada más la gente que habla español, sino para que todos los niños de todos los idiomas hablen un segundo idioma y puedan triunfar en esta vida. Les recuerdo que en América Latina tan solo son más de 560 millones de seres humanos, que no todo es el inglés y no todo se puede lograr con el inglés. Yo los felicito y les quiero mandar una enorme felicitación por todo lo que están haciendo. Muchas gracias. Gracias por apoyarnos.
Gracias. Next we have Víctor Carmona, and I will give him a call. Buenas tardes, señor Carmona.
Sí, buenas tardes.
Habla Sandra y es su turno de hablar con el consejo. Tiene 3 minutos y le voy a decir cuando le falten 30 segundos.
Claro que sí, gracias.
Puede comenzar.
Claro que sí. Buenas noches, Presidenta CAPS, miembros del Consejo, Superintendente Mozoca y comunidad. Mi nombre es Víctor Carmona y soy miembro del comité DILAC. Tengo 2 estudiantes en la escuela Dos Pueblos High School. Como oficial electo DILAC, padre de 2 estudiantes, y como parte interesada en el desarrollo del Plan Meta, me gustaría compartir esos comentarios con ustedes. Por la información que se nos ha proporcionado en diferentes talleres y conferencias, nos hemos dado cuenta de los muchos beneficios de la educación multilingüe. Como padre de un estudiante con educación especial, me gustaría agregar que la educación multilingüe nos ayudaría a explorar otras áreas que serían beneficiosas para un sector del alumnado. Cuando se le evalúa en inglés en una edad temprana, puede haber un resultado no completamente real. Al aprobar el Plan Meta, le daríamos a los educadores una visión más amplia de lo que es la diferencia de lenguajes y cultura versus un posible diagnóstico de problema de lenguaje. Por esta y muchas otras razones, estoy apoyando la aprobación del Plan Meta para ofrecerles mejores oportunidades a muchos estudiantes que están dentro del programa de educación especial y los estudiantes en general. Gracias por la oportunidad de expresar mi opinión, pero sobre todo, gracias por todo su esfuerzo y profesionalismo a todo el personal del distrito escolar en esta difícil situación. Gracias otra vez.
Gracias. Next, we have Marina Zárate, and I will give her a call.
Hola.
Sí, señora Zárate.
Sí.
Habla Sandra y es su turno de hablar con el consejo. Le voy a dar 3 minutos y yo le diré cuando le falten 30 segundos.
Ok, gracias.
Puede empezar.
Gracias. Buenas noches, Presidenta Katz, miembro del Consejo, Superintendente Matsuoka y comunidad presente por medio de esta plataforma. Mi nombre es Marina Zárate y soy una de las copresidentas del Comité DILAC. Tengo 4 estudiantes bilingües en las escuelas San Marcos High School y La Colina Junior High. Como oficial electo de DILAC, madre de estudiantes y como parte interesada en el desarrollo del Plan Meta, me gustaría compartir los siguientes comentarios con ustedes. Primero que nada, me gustaría agradecer a nuestras facilitadoras Francisca Sánchez en el Plan Meta, Paula Sevilla y Rosa Molina en el Plan de LI, al magnífico equipo de acceso lingüístico de nuestro distrito escolar, al igual que la participación y asistencia de Rose Muñoz y Jackie Reed, miembros del Consejo. El trabajo de todas las partes interesadas ha sido excepcional. El desarrollo del Plan Meta abrió puertas a nuevas ideas, dudas y a un sinfín de preguntas a las que pudimos gratamente encontrar respuestas a lo largo de las reuniones. Como comunidad, entendemos la necesidad de implementar un programa de doble inmersión para nuestros estudiantes en este distrito. Recordemos que los estamos preparando para un futuro aún incierto y el darles la oportunidad a todos ellos, sin distinciones, de desarrollar su aprendizaje como estudiantes multilingües es sin duda una ventaja para su futuro, así como para nuestra comunidad. Agradezco su tiempo, compromiso y apoyo a este plan y pido su aprobación a Meta, especialmente en estos tiempos difíciles. El Plan Meta es sin duda una luz en este largo camino. Gracias.
Gracias. President Capps, members of the board, we have our last speaker, Moni DeWitt, and I will give her a call. Your turn to speak to the board. You have 3 minutes, and I will give you a 30-second warning. You can begin.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sure appreciate it. Yeah, so board, I am very interested in this topic. And one of the things that hasn't been raised is how are we going to pay for this? Whether or not we think the program is successful. And that has not been addressed, although I have understood it's coming out of LCAP, which does concern me because, as we all know, what we're trying to do here is close the achievement gap. And the people who are hit the worst in our district are those with learning differences. You know, they're failing and the gap is biggest with them. And I have thoroughly researched this, and there are several things we can do, we've been begging you to do, to help this group. And one is to use a more phonemic approach. And we need to no longer use the balanced literacy. We should also do child find, early intervention, and we could consider reducing class sizes in the K-3 space. I firmly believe if we did this, as well as offered some one-on-one intervention for our Latinx in poverty over the summer, and those with learning differences, they would close their gap. This happens to students in private school. This could happen to our students. Now, I also want to let you know from a personal note, my family, my mother was a pianist, my father a doctor and chemical engineer. They both came from Holland, and all my family was born there, but I was the first born here. And we were meant to speak Dutch at home. I never knew English until I came to the first grade. I didn't even go to preschool, but I did go to a small Catholic school.
where they had a phonemic approach. And I learned to read despite being dyslexic. And I never stayed back or anything. And of course, I wasn't diagnosed then, but I went on to study at a great book school. So why I'm sharing my personal experience is that
30 seconds.
For people, immersion into the English language with a phonemic base will close that achievement gap. And I do want to end and ask the board to, last week I spoke about a bullying incident, and the board actually kind of said I attacked him. I felt very humiliated. I really like free speech in the Brown Act, and the community engagement was seriously lacking here. Some of the people who are speaking up were handpicked by Marie Horton, and they haven't asked people who disagree.
Time. It's time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. President Capps, and that concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our speakers. And just to reiterate, that was public comment for both F1 and F2, these relevant agenda items. So with that, I'm sorry again that I took that a little bit out of order, but we will then now move to board questions or comments on the Meta plan. Ms. Ford.
Oh, thanks so much. I just want to reiterate, I think we're lucky that we have such an amazing group of consultants working with us, and the hard work of this committee. It's really been an amazing, I would think, a role model, a template for the way to go forward with plans. And I'm wondering if Rosa Molina, if you'd be willing to talk to us just a little bit too, perhaps since you have such an amazing national perspective, perhaps you could tell us just a little bit about how Santa Barbara compares to other districts in terms of biliteracy, and perhaps looking forward, what are some of the possible roadblocks or stumbles which we might face as we go forward?
Thank you for the question. I'm getting used to Zoom myself. Biliteracy in the state of California expanded after the first 5 programs were very well studied. The programs in San Francisco, in Oakland, in San Jose, San Diego, and Santa Monica, Malibu. Those 5 programs were not allowed to disseminate the model until students moved through the elementary program. And then at that point, we received state and national attention to develop the program across the country. In the state of California, we now have 460 districts involved in two-way immersion. In the county of Santa Barbara Unified School District is the largest school district not to have a program. And so it was an incredibly important process for me personally, being that I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, to come back and be able to talk about our experiences losing language, having language replaced, and only with an attempt for those of us who were born here to have to recapture it at the high school level, never to have it at the native-like level that students who start to study a second language formally at the age 5 have as a result of multiple years of study. So you now enter a network, a national network, because across the country, there are only 4 states without dual language programs. Those states have English first legislation, which prevents students from being coupled with native speaking students of a language to be able to really study within this model. So I think it's very important for us to know that you're at a crossroads, that it's important for the district and the community when parents are urging you to move forward, to answer for yourself whether or not being bilingual and biliterate is truly a 21st century skill that you want for your students and for children in your community. This issue is not, and this program is designed for children who are English learners, but English speakers greatly benefit from being grouped with native speakers of another language. the fact of the matter is that the research is very clear that if students are engaged in formal second language study as young children, and they move that study into the high school and the college level, that basically they have incredible cognitive development and also a different worldview. We heard the speakers today talking about English being very important, being most important for students to have academic success. But the reality is that a child who is bilingual and biliterate has a superior brain power in their capability of being able to navigate the program academically, linguistically, and culturally. Being able to really transfer those skills, not only from their mother tongue and their culture, but engage fully in the citizenry of your community. So the students up to this point have not had that opportunity, haven't been engaged in this work. And I think it's, high time, Santa Barbara, for us to put these programs in place and start with the schools that have a tremendous need for biliteracy, because English only and English submersion programs have replaced a language resource for your community that's going to be very, very hard to recapture in the life of a child. So answer the question about bilingualism and biliteracy as a 21st century skill, because that is where you're headed, and that is a great gift to your community. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, thank you. That's great.
Thank you.
That was great. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, Ms. Sims-Moten.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for this presentation, and I appreciate the comments coming from from the public, and I appreciate your response, Ms. Molina, to the question from Ms. Ford. I had a question with regards to how do we then incorporate our students who are maybe lagging behind this program, just in terms of how we're implementing it? How do we then incorporate them into that piece, or will they not have a chance to catch up? So that's a question. That's number one question. How do you do that? And you can address that piece. My second question with regards to early learning, as you have stated with regards to the cognitive development, is there, as children learning early, they'll have a much more, engaged cognitive development with regards to language. And so my question would be, as an executive director of First Five, how do we then support the early learning? So by the time those kids get to kindergarten, how much more reinforced, they will be with regards to that. But how would we engage the parents, and how do we do that? So and we may have to talk later offline about that, but that's an important piece that I would like for you to at least start to address.
I would love to have this conversation with you offline, because early education is at the heart of this model, starting as early as we can for children not to experience language loss, at the early stages of their readiness and their language development. I think it's very important for us to look at the early 5 programs that have been English only for so long, and students start to replace language when their first language is very tentative. And we're starting to see movement across preschool education to have programs that support the child's first language, be it English or be it Spanish or Japanese or Russian or whatever, the first language, and while the children are learning English. There isn't a parent, there isn't an educator involved in dual language that is not as committed to English development and English academic growth as they are to the development and the academic growth of a second language. So, but we do believe, and that is the mantra of our organization, that no child has to lose a language to learn a language. And that we have for so many years and for many generations been engaged in language replacement to the detriment of our community. So I just urge us to have this conversation, and you can always reach me through my organization, and let's continue. Let's talk about this. I'd love to, be a voice in your ear about this.
Okay, and one more follow-up. So what we've found also in early learning is where the childcare settings are. So again, you know, there's a lot of children who are in family, friend, and neighbor settings.
Yes.
So how do we include that group that may not get that, you know, this more formal setting, and they're that little bit more behind by the time they get into kindergarten readiness, and that's it. So that's another piece too that perhaps is also part of your model that we might want to look at. How do we also address those kids who are not in the traditional center-based settings, but they're at families? And how do we, and then again, that allows us the chance to engage those families that are not traditionally in those particular,
Right.
you know, traditional settings. And so how do we also look at that as well?
Oh, so know that dual language and two-way immersion programs are but one program option, and that in order for us to be successful with the great variance of language capacity of our community, that we have to understand the different nuances that you raise to be able to offer second language learning for more children early on. We know what works, we have the research behind it, and we have to implement it in such a way that that is carefully designed and that it's multi-year. So the earlier we start and the more succinct we are in what our targets are and you know how to design the program, the more successful students will be. The adults are the ones making decisions about these designs, and we are basically offering as a program option to our community. Why not? Why not?
Thank you.
Dr. Reed.
Thank you. I also want to thank the public for your comments and for the amazing experts that we have here tonight with us and joining us. Thank you, Ms. Molina, for your information. I appreciate your comments and the information you provided not only tonight, but as part of this collaborative to bring this forward. So thank you for that as well. I strongly support the need for students in the 21st century to be biliterate and bicultural. And I want to thank everyone who has led this in terms of our district to make this happen. The leadership of Dr. Raul Ramirez, and the Assistant Superintendent of Elementary, but also Maria Lorias Horton, who is the Director of English Learner and Family Engagement. Your leadership spearheading this comprehensive plan, I have been impressed from the beginning. To me, it was like preaching to the choir. Everything that you shared, I believe in. I believe it's important. And I think if we want to have students in the 21st century be capable and survive in this and be global, they need to be biliterate and bicultural. So I totally respect also this plan, this, you know, I remember as I was reading it, because we've been involved in the process, which is another thing I've appreciated, the process. We've been brought forward all the way through. We've had a chance to participate, to get involved in many ways. And I was amazed that it was 190 pages, by goodness. And that, yeah, there's 110 to that plan. It looks like everything that you could throw and bring in there, you did. And I appreciate that. The clear goals and action plans, the aligning with the district mission and core values, the programmatic guidelines that supported cultural and linguistic sustainable learning environments. So, and clearly I understand and know that current research really has shown that this does make a difference in our students' academic achievement, but also just being globally capable and being able to really be successful, I think, in our world. So I'm just going to stop there, but clearly I have a bias. I think I support this, and I think it's terrific, and I look forward to seeing how we can move it forward and get it implemented and start the programming, get it going. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I know that Ms. Munoz is having continued technical difficulties. I myself don't have any comments to add other than just echoing the thanks. So I believe, unless Ms. Munoz is able to get on, that we can move forward on the recommendation.
Ms. Capps, actually Rose has dialed in and she would like to make a comment. Rose,
Okay.
can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry about that. I was dropped off of Zoom, but I did have a comment, being that, I attended and participated in the Meta stakeholder group. And I really feel that as a board, we can support and contribute to all of our students, all the students in our district becoming multilinguals. It has been a very thoughtful process with a high amount of planning in the development of this plan. In addition to having the benefits of dual language instruction. I very much appreciated the time and energy of all the stakeholders, the DLAC parents for their input and for their many hours spent on this, and all the guidance that has been provided to us by Francisca Sanchez, who's brought so much experience, so much wisdom, also to Rosa Molina, Paula Sevilla, and last but not least to Maria Larios Horton. And I really hope to have the support of our of the board for this, and I'm very excited about the prospect of having having it approved and going on to the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Okay, are we ready as a board? I believe we are to take action on this recommendation to approve the plan. Yes, Ms. Ford.
If we are really ready to move forward, I would be so delighted to move that we approve the META plan tonight in its form as presented.
I would like to second that.
Excellent. Second by Ms. Munoz, motion by Ms. Ford. All in favor with this item? Aye. Motion carries.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Thanks to our speakers. Thanks to our public speakers for weighing in. And we will move on to the next item, which is related, which is item F2.
Thank you once again, Board President Capps. I'm very, very glad that we're able to have this conversation in tandem. Much of the commentary in the prior item was to the development of biliteracy, to development of language, the fostering, I should say, of language that many of our students bring. This presentation here is bringing forward a discussion that we originally had last year, a very exploratory one, and that came through very much in tandem with the broader META plan as a strand, if you will, within that plan, which is the importance of developing biliteracy and continuing that biliteracy through a student's entire educational career. As you all know, we do have a representation of that programming within our community, and that is at Adelante Charter. And then most recently, as you see here in the timeline, we expanded and moved in the direction of developing programming for the 2020-2021 school year at Santa Barbara Junior High School. And that was a very, very heavy lift and continues to be, led by Ms. Maria Larios Horton, supported by Paula Sevilla and of course, Rosa Molina. And so what we're here to discuss tonight is the proposal to be able to move forward with the development of a program in elementary on the west side, and now most recently as of January 29th at board meeting, we had talked about having that programming develop and unfold at McKinley Elementary as a complement and balance to our broader Santa Barbara community. I want to go very quickly through several factors that I think are important in terms of arriving at the decision around the school placement specifically. The board, if my recollection served me, expressed a lot of interest, as they have, as you all have tonight, in development of a district-led and district-initiated dual language program. And we wanted to be very diligent about the where, to make sure that from the outset, we provided ourselves with the greatest opportunity for success. So part of the feasibility study that was developed and was identified as having taken place this year were built upon really three broad factors. The first factor, as you see here, is we needed to ensure that there was sufficient community interest. So we point to several points of data, several points of information that have led us to the conclusion that there is significant community interest. First, more broadly, Proposition 58, as you see listed there, expressed really strong support. So there is a broader network of support within the community that we feel is primed and ready to move forward and support us more robustly. In terms of our own community survey results, we surveyed our parents earlier this year, our community, in fact, internal and external. And what we did was we identified, based on those results, that 81%, as you see there, had high or very high level of support. And we specifically talked about the West Side being those schools, namely 5 really on the West Side. And so you see there, the interest is very, very high amongst parents and community. Factor 2, we talked about now getting down to the school level opportunities. What are the opportunities and constraints within a school? You see here, this is data that was from 1819 that gives us the linguistic profile of our students. You see there a broad distribution of EOs and ELs, and I'll tell you why Monroe and McKinley are named specifically. Many of our other programs in that community, in that broader community, the West Side, already have programs of choice or thematic programs within the schools. Harding has the IB program, and that's school-wide. We have the Montessori program, which is a program of choice over at Adams. We have a conversion toward a STEAM focus at SPCA. And so it really left us with Monroe and McKinley as the two primary options. One of the pieces that I want to promote on this side is that from a principal leadership perspective, Ms. Garcia Yoshitomi, Elena Garcia Yoshitomi, who came to us this year as a principal at McKinley, does have significant experience in working with and leading programs in the dual language space. Different models, but specifically the model that we are looking for. And one other piece, since Ms. Sims-Moten raised the question of dual language in the primary years, McKinley has a preschool program on site that I think would be very advantageous for us, and that we are definitely assuming will be part of our design, and you'll see in just a moment. Moving on to factor 3, this is important from a staffing perspective. We recognize, and I wanted to lead with the fact that any change is significant. Any change of this magnitude is going to be significant to a school community. It's going to be significant to the staff. And so from that perspective, we recognized that we wanted to accomplish 2 goals. One is to develop a model that was sustainable, that was done well, and based on the best model available, the best research around models available, sorry. And we wanted to ensure that we were mindful of the level of disruption that it would create for the staff. So with that said, you see here a proposed rollout that really carries us through the 27-28 school year. And we can talk more extensively about that. But in short, it's a 1 grade level per year rollout. And of course, to carry the program out, you need staffing that is going to be capable of and equipped to be able to carry out the model. And in this case, ensuring that that we find bilingual candidates, biliterate staff for those roles is really of utmost importance. Unfortunately, that does mean that we will have to work with our existing McKinley staff to determine the fit moving forward, and how and what those options are for staff, perhaps and most likely moving toward a different school. So those are conversations that we've had already, that we've engaged in over these last several months. And so I just wanted to represent those here and now. And so with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Leidos Horton, who's going to talk about the process that we've undertaken really over these last several months since you last heard from us as a board.
And if we could just be a little mindful of time, we've been on this for an hour, and just bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. We did hold 2 parent info sessions at McKinley in March, right before the school closures. They were extensive. We hadn't planned for them to be this long, but parents were definitely interested and had really great questions. What was most interesting about the feedback with the families that did attend our parent info sessions at McKinley was that their greatest concern was that their current students wouldn't be able to participate in a dual language immersion program. I think once they were presented with information, research, the programmatic pieces of the program, they really wished that their students would be able to participate. So moving forward, we would be looking to see other ways in which we could involve other students currently at McKinley in multilingual experiences. And then to keep to our time, I would like for Rosa Molina to speak to this last slide, just to close us out before the board decides on whether we can move forward with McKinley's selection.
So as I mentioned before, this program, when it was developed, was transformational in nature. It requires the teachers and the leadership to be highly engaged in academic achievement in 2 languages for all the students that participate in the program. This is a program of choice. No one is forced into the program. That's something that's very, very important for all of us to remember. And so the families that engage in this work from the very beginning are signing on to biliteracy, to this effort of biliteracy over a child's K-8 experience moving into high school. The goal for the second goal for this program, and the second pillar of this program, is bilingualism and biliteracy. It is not enough for us that children speak the language, but that in fact children are developing high levels of literacy in both languages, and that they get to a point of grade level capacity in both languages. The third part of this is that students know how to identify and they know how to identify with the language and the people, and that they know how to take the language out into a public space to be able to use it appropriately, that they have this understanding of both culture and the people that speak the language, and they're able to navigate through these cross-cultural experiences that they certainly will be part of as they move the language into a public situation. And the critical consciousness goal is really embedded in the sociocultural competence, the ability to recognize and analyze systems of inequality and commit to act against those. In other words, students are developing pro-social skills where they can defend themselves as second language learners, as children who have been engaged in the cultural development and the language development over the course of their elementary and middle school years, and can continue to shape their worldview in a very different manner. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers. Okay, so just board, if there's any additional questions, these items were allotted for 25 minutes and we're now about an hour and 15 minutes. So any additional questions to our speakers? Seeing none, I think we need a motion. Anybody?
I'd like to move to accept the plan for the dual immersion program and do it very enthusiastically.
Thanks, Ms. Ford. I need a second.
I'd like to second it. With
Okay, Ms. Munoz. Thank you so much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, thanks to our speakers again. Moving on to the next item in action agenda is F3, which is approval of the food service restructuring plan and reduction in staff. We have no public speakers for this agenda item. Mr. Matsuoka and Mr. Tay.
Okay, before I launch into this topic, let me begin with offering these are really challenging times. Certainly the pandemic will be a lifetime experience that we will all remember. And this is a difficult report to deliver to the board. And, you know, recommending layoffs is never a fun task, but it's an important question for the board. So just by way of background, board and those who are watching, our budget challenges in food service have been unfolding for the last almost 2 years. And we have been bringing many reports to you over the last 6 months. And we really are asking the board to take action tonight to begin the layoff process. And I'm gonna walk you through the slides and then feel free to ask any questions. And we've got Meg Jate ready to respond, and also Matthew Dittman, our new food services director. So Todd, if you'll click to the next slide. So in Santa Barbara, we all know our legendary food services program. The scratch cooking, the use of organic food materials, it is so good. People who experience other districts or remember the food that they ate in school cafeterias, we can marvel about the quality that we provide. And under these pandemic conditions, we know that we have become even more important to our students and our families. Next, Todd. And so as we walk you through these slides, school board, here are commitments that we will maintain the same quality of scratch cooking and wholesome and healthy meals, that we will seek to improve the quality and efficiency of our food service program. And this last one is the most important that I want to highlight, that as we get right staffed, that we will be able to meet the needs and demands of our students under normal conditions, and certainly under pandemic conditions because we're serving fewer students because schools are closed. But I want to emphasize that this plan will establish a staffing level, and we will meet the expectations and demands if we were back in business with all of our schools and all of our partners that we provide meals for out in the community. Next, Todd. So the numbers, we have 123 classified employees in the food service department, and we have 1 supervisor. And just pausing on that for impact. 1 supervisor for 123 people. It's pretty standard in HR research that you should supervise 5 to 7 people. One of the challenges in education is our principals supervise, like an elementary principal supervises sometimes 30, 40, 50. But to have 1 person supervising that many people scattered across, probably 15 locations, it's not workable. The other number that we want the board to understand is that we are overstaffed by 24% in our food services program. And Mr. Dittman, because of his background in the commercial, restaurant business, he's used to analyzing the efficiency of kitchens. And so he computed this metric I had never heard of called meals per labor hour. And the ideal for a school kitchen is that for every hour of labor, we should be producing 19 meals. And based on his analysis of last year, our average is 12 meals per labor hour. This is 37% below the ideal that we should be achieving. Next slide, please. So this was in the longer narrative. I just want to tie these two together. So I painted a picture of, so we have one management person supervising 123 people, and we're overstaffed. We've got to get a management layer built in our food service program. If we were to simply add that cost, our deficit gets worse. And so both of these problems are related. We need to establish some management supervision, and we also need to reduce our staffing so that the budget is closer to balanced. And next slide. So in the narrative, we noted, and it was in the upper slide, that we are overstaffed by 24%. We are recommending a first step of a reduction of 16% of our staff. That will help us to get to a closer balanced budget. And so what we are asking for tonight, board, is for your approval of this recommendation for 16% reduction to take place over summer 2020. And should the board approve this recommendation, we'll bring back, it's a formal resolution that our HR team will prepare that will actually begin the layoff process. So I believe that is the last slide. So I will open it up to the board for comments and questions.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka. I just want to almost give sort of a point of order here. As board president, I had recommended that this item not be voted on tonight. It's of such weight to be considering layoffs during this uncharted time of a pandemic that I believed our board deserved to have a report and an opportunity to discuss it before voting. So that is my recommendation to my colleagues. We can still have our conversation, but my recommendation is to not have it be an action item today. Again, given the fact that this has serious life implications for our staff, and also because we've been discussing food service for many months, and this is just one piece, but we've yet to see sort of the holistic parts of the restructuring. And so to lead with this, I'll just be honest, a painful piece without understanding when the new structure is going to happen, what's happening with our partnerships, et cetera, seems out of sync to me. So I will turn it over to my board colleagues for any questions or comments. Ms. Sims-Moten.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I disagree. I think that this should be for action because I think that we have been discussing it over for quite some time. And I realize that it's difficult, even more difficult times at this point. They were difficult prior to the pandemic, but this is even more difficult times, and I certainly respect that. But I think we're still going to have the issue of this food service not being solvent with regards to if we don't do something in terms of that. And I think that in the past recommendations, it has come about in terms of there would be layoffs that would be a part of this, trying to restructure and to keep it a more efficient service so that we could keep it at the level that people are used to. We're able to still provide the level of service and the quality of food that we've been able to do. So I think this is the place for us to discuss it, whether the action we say to table it or go for it, but I think it's important for us to take action on it with regards to that. And secondly, I think that, again, having heard all the background leading up to this particular point, we have now Mr. Dittman here with fresh eyes on a problem that we've heard. And so I really respect that, bringing that forward with regards to here's a different way to look at a problem that has been challenging, both, from the fact of employees, also from the fact of, just the fiscal insolvency of this department, and the fact that it's in a phased-in approach lets me know that it's been thoughtful in this very difficult time. It was difficult when we first heard it. It's difficult now, and it will be even more difficult if we don't make a hard decision right now. It'll be more difficult as our financial picture outward is going to be a little bit more dim. And so making this decision now, I think in the end will keep it sustainable for the years out. And I think it's important and that we're able to see what structural efficiencies that are going into place with regards to this, so that it is sustainable throughout the years and is able to be self-sufficient in that. I know Mr. Tay brought in terms of how we were working with our partners. And so, if there's something more we need to add to that to get further clarification, then I'm open for that as well. But I just don't think that pushing this further out or having, I think we've had reports. And I don't think pushing it further out is going to really make this any less difficult with regards to that. I think we're still going to have to look at layoffs. That's not something anyone wants to do. I think we're still going to have to look at that because we are really bleeding really bad here. And I think that's not responsible fiscally to be able to do that. And oftentimes when you're having to make difficult fiscal decisions, it's going to be heartbreaking, but we got to make a difficult decision in this time in order to make sure in the future that we're strong enough to be able to do the things that we've been able to do. So I think this is a time to discuss. I think we've got a lot of, information leading up to this. And if there's more that we need to get in terms of, we'd like to see more in the phase in as far as do we need to hear from, what more information with regards to your questions, President Capps, what do we need to put in this action so that this team can move forward with regards to taking care of this problem? It gets larger each time that we delay it. And I think this is the time that we need to make the decision. I don't think the decision making is going to get any easier by waiting. So thank you for hearing my comments.
Yeah, no, I respect it. And I just want to answer your question that was directed to me. To me, there's 3 questions that I have yet to hear answers. I would love it if there are answers for them. The first is, as I mentioned, we should understand, I believe the board should understand when the next layer of management will be hired, because potentially could any of those workers who are being laid off somehow either get those positions or move up the chain to avoid this pain at a time that is extremely painful. That's question number 1. Question number 2, every district is challenged by food service right now. We are serving kids who aren't in class. And so it's a national story. It's front page of the LA Times on a regular basis. Are there state funds? Are there ability to make amends here? Have we explored that? Have we been in touch with our state representatives about this issue? That's number 2. I haven't received an answer to that question. Number 3 is, this is a time when our entire community is more hungry than ever. Have we really reached out? I know just from headlines that CAC's senior program, they're up 30%. The lines around the food bank are around the corner. Westside Boys and Girls Club. We get reimbursed for the food no matter who we serve it to. We have kitchen workers who need the jobs, and we have the kitchens and we have the food, and we could get reimbursed. I'm so pleased to see that our rates, the numbers of meals that we're serving are increasing on a daily basis, but couldn't we potentially do more? I don't have the answer to those 3 things, and that's what I was looking for. Again, I believe that layoffs should be the last resort. This does not feel like the last resort. Again, if there's more information that I'm not privy to, I've been asking these questions for some time now.
Sorry. Yeah, I appreciate that, and just in terms of that, and I'm sure just again in this, as we're doing this phase out process, can we answer those questions? But does it still mean that we can't move it forward with regards to how we're making this a much more fiscally efficient process? And in doing that, I was just understanding that we're still able to feed the students that are coming for for food and lunches, and actually we increase breakfast and lunch. But I think we're still meeting that need with the immediate need anyway. So in that case, and so I would hope your questions that you raised, we can certainly reflect those back to staff. Can you raise those questions? But I would still be in support of how do we move forward in making this a much more fiscally solvent food service. And I recognize that each district are doing what they need to do, but we're talking about Santa Barbara Unified in terms of that. How do we stop the bleed in the future with regards to that? I think it's just going to be difficult, and I respect the questions that you asked in terms of that. So that would be my comments.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Reed.
I guess I'm not, I thought I was muted. I guess I'm not muted. Okay. I appreciate the comments of both. Ms. Capps and Ms. Sims Moten. I know that we have been provided by Carrie and the district over the past number of months, from December, when we received our first report that outlined the deficit that we were facing for food services, and then again in I believe it was January, or I'm not sure. Mr. Metzger, is that correct? It was January.
Yes.
Okay.
While you're talking, I'll look it up again.
Yeah, but the rollout was clear that we were challenged, that we were challenged in terms of what we were facing with the food services department. And so when I saw this report, I have to say the news wasn't surprising, but it's still very upsetting. Clearly, during the impact of this coronavirus, the timing, though clearly because we're in the COVID-19 umbrella right now, we're facing doubly, not just the fiscal problems that we've been facing anyway, but now with this coronavirus, we're even more impacted. But also during this time, many people have lost their jobs and are having difficulty finding jobs. And I think under these conditions, it's very difficult and challenging. So when I first read this, my inclination was, well, is there a possibility that this could be done in phases? Could we resolve this over time? And so I know in the past, in certain times when we come to a process, we typically do have a report and then we have an action item. And so this being an action item to cut staff was it really, I mean, it hit me hard. It did. I understand though, when you look at the numbers in terms of overstaffing and the goals, I mean, it makes very logical sense. The goal of meals per labor hour and the deficit every day coming to $25,000 a day. I mean, at this rate, we are increasing our deficit, and who knows in what other areas we'll be needing to cut back as we progress under this COVID-19 new normal. And it'll constantly change. It's going to be fluid. The questions you raise, I mean, I think I have another, from that, I think, wow, how can we not act on this? And how that we need to alleviate these costs. We need to stop this deficit and this drain. And I also understand that in light of the most likely future recession that is going to hit us, and that it's important that we deal and resolve with these overstaffing issues. But what came to mind also is what Ms. Capps brought forward, a question that I had. Will you be using any of the current food service employees to fill these management positions? So before we make a decision to have these positions cut, are there options for those employees to fill those other positions? And I don't know the answer to that either. And I guess I also understand that we need to resolve this issue, but I'm wondering if we can get more answers to this, if there's opportunities in this situation. I also know that even if we have this as a report, we could still have it as an action item at our next board meeting. We don't have to wait, or, you know, maybe in May. So I'm grappling with the challenge of this, because I in all honesty, the thought of cutting our employees at a time when we are so impacted by this virus and struggle for them to find jobs. And at the same time, I realize that we're like a sieve, just leaking constantly thousands and thousands of dollars, you know. My comment for right now.
Yeah, Ms. Munoz.
Yes, I'd also like to comment. You know, I have several questions. and it's at the same time, it is, you know, as Dr. Reed and Ms. Smolten said, you know, and as Mr. Matsuoka stated, you know, the fiscally, we need to be fiscally responsible as a board, and how many thousands of dollars we're losing every day is of concern to me. And I don't take it lightly, you know, to have employees lose their jobs. I think as we said, you know, we've had several months of knowing that that we would have to make a difficult decision. And it is very difficult in a time when families and employees are trying to hold on to their jobs, you know, big numbers of folks applying for unemployment and such. My question with the report is that I'd like to know, you know, I know that there's the concept of the 19 meals per hour. And I do have a question about that, is I'd like to know what other school districts have in terms of employees and meals that are expected to be prepared per hour in school districts versus commercial settings, you know, in restaurants and such. I think that the dedication of our food service staff, you know, they're talking about feeding our children, you know, feeding our seniors at some of our sites and so forth. And that's different, you know, and such. And so I do know that, you know, we need to act. I'd like to have more information in terms of, you know, like I said, like the rate, what's expected of our employees. They do, you know, just like the person that works in the office, you know, they do other things besides their duties and such. And I am concerned about, you know, how much money, you know, as a board needing to take a step in order to be responsible to the school budget and such. So that was my concern.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Maybe Mr. Dittman can answer that.
Yes, hello, thank you. Yes, the metric, the meals per labor hour, is actually a metric that's used by the USDA for food service programs specifically at schools. In the private sector, we don't actually use that. We use, you know, a labor percentage cost of around 25 to 35%. Within food service industries, or food service within schools, it's actually at 40%. It's actually set at a higher rate. In terms of production, that 19, that goal level, that's not actually at the very high end, but because we do scratch cooking when we're not what's called a convenience style kitchen, where we just get food and then, you know, heat it up and serve it out, that goes up dramatically higher. But because we're a scratch kitchen, we're on a little bit of the lower end, particularly in regards to the amount of meals we serve per day. I don't know if that answered your question.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yes, thank you, Mr. Dittman. That's helpful information to know, and thanks for doing that research.
Yes.
Ms. Ward.
So I tend to agree with you about process, and I appreciate everyone giving some consideration just to the process issue. For me, I think it's always, and we've been so great about this, and we just saw this with a couple other issues today, so great about methodically introducing in board meetings lots of data, research, and ideas that lead up to a plan, that lead up to a report, that lead up to a vote. So for me, tonight really should be just a report where we're now thinking about lots of ideas. I so appreciate the opinions of my fellow board members, and we haven't had a chance to even talk about this before in terms of a down and dirty kind of a conversation. And then in 2 weeks, we could approve some sort of restructured, maybe even exactly what's presented tonight. And then in 2 weeks more, we could, by the end of May, we could be approving possible reductions in staff. To me, layoffs, as you probably all know, but layoffs are either terminations of positions or reduction of hours, or a combination of both. And it seems like these are all very interesting ideas that are sort of part of what might be included in a plan for restructuring going forward. And I also just want to say that for me, I felt like this report had sort of it had a point of view, and the point of view seemed to me to be negative about the food service workers. In other words, and it was contradictory in that there was this idea that there were all these people who weren't supervised, and that was a very difficult thing. And so lots of things probably have gone unnoticed or there's been no feedback, etc. And yet then it goes on to sort of say lots of negative things about these folks when we started out with the hypothesis that if these people had just been better managed and it was a more manageable situation, food service would be run better. Also, this report addresses, I took some notes, that there are problems of poor food quality, inconsistent food quality. There have to be efforts to address the health and safety of our employees and further training. So I personally would like to think more about this and just make sure I've asked all the questions I want to ask before voting on a restructuring plan that seems to have a lot of stuff thrown at the wall. And I know a lot of it will stick. And yes, we have to be fiscally responsible, but I'm just wondering if we could be as disciplined about this as we've been about other things.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. I just wanted to add, you know, we have talked about food service for quite some time now, but this is the first conversation about staff reduction that we've had in a board meeting, and that's really important. And we're in a new reality of a time when the people of this community need food, and we have the food service workers. We have the ability to be reimbursed for those costs, and we have a team that can provide the community with what's probably most needed right now is meals. So I do think this is a new reality. I know we're all committed to the fiscal responsibility, and that's why we are where we are, and I appreciate the due diligence of the team, but I do think that some community aspects of this have not yet been pursued. If I'm incorrect, please tell me if you've had conversations with other community partners and the answer has been no, we don't need help. But I haven't heard that, and I have been asking. So that's where I am at this point. If I understand correctly, we do not have to make this decision until May 30th for that to be the 2 months. Is that correct, Dr. Becchio?
If you issue layoffs, there's a 60-day time period where when we notify the employee, from the time we notify the employee to the time the layoff takes effect.
So does May 30th work, or even a vote May 12th at our next meeting?
We would then notice employees, and there would be a 60 days. So that would take us to that end of July.
Okay.
Many of these, the employees are, Meg might be able to help me here, but I believe the impact would be on mostly 9-month employees who will be done working for us this year, June 10th, June 6th. And so they would not be brought back for the following year in that case. As far as the question around bumping, since it's an HR matter, I thought I'd address it for the board members. You know, if there's a person that's hired from within into one of the management positions, what could be a likely scenario that some of those are filled from internal candidates, that would leave an open position that someone else in the organization would bump up into, possibly. Leaving open possibly on that end someone to be reemployed that was on the reemployment list. So that's probably a more likely scenario of how that would work. I do not see that someone that was actually laid off might get that exact position in management, simply because our least senior employees probably would not qualify for the management positions that will be opening.
So is there a sense, Mr. Tay, did you want to add there?
Well, I was going to say that the 20 people or the 16%, we were going to eliminate a group of people, meaning we have several descriptive job descriptions in different areas. And so we were going to eliminate those 2 of those areas that have, I think it's 9 and 7 people in it or something like that, plus the hourlies. So we would eliminate that job class. Also, I wanted to speak to Ms. Capps' conversation or question about reaching out. I have spoken to Salud Carvajal's office. In fact, Max and I are texting almost on a daily basis regarding trying to get money for food service. I constantly speak with Kevin Gordon regarding USDA money. I'm on with also with School Services of California, and I've also emailed Monique Lamone's office. So, you know, a couple weeks ago when we saw this going, or even probably about a month ago when we saw these meals were not coming in and we were losing money drastically, I started reaching out to everyone to push, to let them know that this was happening, and it is happening with almost everybody, every school district. But I want to be clear that, you know, since November when I've been bringing this, we've mentioned that the restructuring had to happen. This is a structural issue with food service. And if you go back to 2015, when we were serving almost, you know, about the same, if not more meals, because we had more students in the district, we had 88 employees, 88. Yeah, we weren't doing the outside vendors, but right now we aren't doing very many outside vendors right now, except CAC. We have 60 people in the kitchen. They're feeding 6,000 kids a day, plus our community service. I'm CAC. So we know we can do this with fewer people. And do we all want to sit here and lay off people during this time? Absolutely not. But I'm worried about if this continues and we don't have any money coming in, you know, in another 6 months, this is just going to draw on the general fund. This is just going to hit our educational budget. And, you know, our assessed value may look good in our general fund this year, but we have no idea what's going to happen in 21, 22. And those are the concerns that I have, what's going to happen in the next 12 months to 18 months. And so, and as Ms. Sims-Moten said, this is not going to get easier, for sure. So that's.
Thanks, Mr. Shea. That's great news that you've reached out. That just sort of supports my suggestion that we wait to see if some of those conversations actually prove to be helpful here. Because again, I'm sure this is something that not just our community is dealing with, but I know other communities are dealing with in Congress. And there are funds that are being doled out in a myriad of ways every single day. So Ms. Sims-Moten.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a couple of questions. So Meg, with regards to reimbursement, I know that was something you brought up about in past reports. Are we getting the reimbursement at the level that we should be? That's my number one question. And even though my second point is, although we're reaching out to these sources, is it just for this moment? I really think it's about a structural issue. That's what we have to keep addressing, because you can reach out and get the money to fix this moment, right? But if we don't think about the structural issue, that we will have this moment again, and we would have this moment again when we don't know what the results or the impact of the COVID is going to be in those later years. There's going to be an impact, certainly, but we don't know what that is. And so I worry about, you know, when we're reaching out and we're getting the money for this moment, but what about the structural deficiencies that has led us kind of to this moment and over time? And that's not a blame, it's just an observation with regards to that. And I'm sorry, I had one more point with regards to folks in the community being, you know, not being fed. And so I know I've heard many presentations with regards to the food bank, and I know there's long lines. So how are we connecting in that piece and feeding the community? Are we basically restricted to feeding our students? So what are restrictions with doing to that? So, but even if we were, but certainly, you know, that you know, in terms of you reaching out, Meg, have you reached out to the food bank to say we can do this? I don't know. So that's a question that I'm asking.
Yes, Matt can chime in here. We have weekly calls, which Matt is on with the food bank and CAC and Salvation Army and the whole lot of them. So Matt can answer that question because he's on those calls.
Yeah, and it's a coordinated effort that everyone in those different organizations are attempting to address different needs. With regards to your specific question, can we serve people outside of our students? In a sense, yes, because the provision waiver is for anyone under 18 and younger, but they don't need to be accompanied, or they don't need to be there with their parent. The issue, however, is we can't just give out by the stipulation of these waivers the foods willy-nilly. So there are different gaps in that food insecure community, which are trying to be filled by people like the food bank and whatnot.
Yeah, and thank you both for that. So I would also say in the midst of this too, can we, again, to be able to be sustainable beyond this moment, what are the efficiencies we're looking at with regards to our reduction in staff? And my question would be, are all those FTEs filled, or are they just, are they unfilled, maybe ones that we need to eliminate of that 16%? Or they all have a person in them?
They all have a person in them. We have lost some people up in Santa Maria, and we have not filled those positions. So any attrition, we are not filling, for sure.
Yeah.
The reimbursable rate, Matt, do you want to talk about that? What we are getting when we're on the summer food program, not the National Child, which only allows us to do a breakfast and a lunch together or a breakfast and a supper together. So we can't do a breakfast, lunch, and dinner on this plan. Is that correct, Matt?
That is correct. And the reimbursable rates for lunch and supper are the same, about 4.5, where the breakfast is a fraction of that.
And so our cost of a lunch and our dinners are what is it, $366 or $399, I think it is currently. So we are making money. However, we're not selling enough meals. That's the problem.
So
we're not providing enough meals.
In order for us to be, break even point and just on the current plan of what we're doing, and this is just COVID, this isn't normal times, because again, normal times we have systemic issues, but we would still need to be selling on roughly about 6,000, we need to be serving about 6,000 more meals per day, which is quite a tall order. And that's just to break even.
But we've increased about that much. I don't want to belabor this, but we have increased from about 15,000 a week to about 21,000 a week. So, I mean, it's possible. I appreciate everybody's comments. This is a different time. If we lay people off now, they're not going to get another job. It's a different time than if we actually do some more of this homework and figure out the management layer, talk to our elected officials, see if there are relief funds, et cetera. It'll be a different time. So that's where I am. I'm offering a middle ground here to have this be a report today and a vote next meeting, which would still fall well within the time frame to do this, make this decision, or we can bring it to a vote. Ms. Ford.
Thanks. I do have one question about related to your comment, Ms. Capps, for perhaps Ms. Jete. If I vote in favor of this restructuring, if I vote tonight in favor of it, am I voting in favor of 6 new hires as managers?
Yes, in theory, the restructuring, however, the way we have it restructuring, we have 34 12-month employees right now. And I think we have 15 managers, right, Matt, that are 12-month. We would reduce that to 6. So we would not have 15 managers, we would have 6 managers, and then the bumping starts. So if the people that are applying for the jobs are within our food service department, and even then, John, right, they would have bumping rights. So if X manager was not picked to be a manager, then they would bump into a position underneath and it would bump all the way down like that. So it's
We were told that there are very few, if any, people that would really qualify for the manager roles.
No, there are a couple that are currently managers that would qualify.
I think what my comment about qualifying is the people that would be issued the layoff notices would likely not qualify for a management position because they're too new to our organization.
So, Ms. Ford, you asked a really good question because it is implied that this is also approving a management restructure. And I've heard that request from multiple board members. So I think what we will do is we will lay out more of the specifics of that. It involves a job description. It involves a salary range. It involves the financial almost swapping, so to speak, because we've got to get our staffing correct so that we can afford that space. I've seen just a really quick draft of the roles and responsibilities, but you raise a good point. What am I approving? And I think what we'll bring back is, okay, now we're going to add that to the package. That's what you're approving, is the layoffs, but also the management restructuring. So I want you to hear my perspective about the sort of the domino effect. If you want us to like build out that management structure, we need to do the layoffs in order to create both to happen. And so we haven't had time really to build that. I guess my question to the board, if we present that, is that part of the information that you need to make a decision? Because they're connected. I think you've asked a really good question, Ms. Ford. So
I would say yes. I would go back to the process. I would go back to needing more information, and that if we were to follow the process that we've done in the past, a report now would allow us to get the answers. If we make this a report now, to get those answers to those questions, because I would like to know. It's very difficult for me to just blindly say this is what we're going to do, and I don't know what the systems are really going to be in place.
So I've been making a list of the things that board members have asked for. So what we will build out is what is the restructuring of the management layer. I'm not sure that we'll have a full job description ready. I'm kind of looking at Meg, Matt, and John. We'll do our best to get maybe a rough draft of a job description. That might take a couple board meetings. So we'll build that out. I think Ms. Jate has a long list of contacts and people and organizations that she's met with. So that should be stated in a board agenda so that it's documented. These are the steps that she has done. And I think there's also the mechanics of the layoff that we could give you more information about that, so specifically what job classes, what are the mechanics, and so that you understand the details of that. I think those are the things that I've made notes about. Board members, are there any other needs for information that you have? Ms. Smoten.
I don't necessarily, I get all the information in terms of that. For me, I'm looking at it from a fiscal, just really unnerves me about the continued bleeding if we don't fix this issue, right? And so my second question would be, is the fact that seemingly in terms of the action you were asking us to take tonight, does that delay you getting, you're just gonna go do it and then bring it back? You don't need approval or through an action to do it? Or, because I would hope that we would take action and give you then directions, things that we would wanna see in your reorganization plan. Maybe that's backwards, but I'm just trying to, I wonder about public opinion in between this time and what will further push it out. I'm just thinking all the things that have happened when we've done through our process, and I'm not trying to dismiss or mitigate our process, but I'm also trying to take into account our environment, what happens when we're trying to make what, you know, we feel as a board we need to take, but then the longer we push it out, then it invites public comment that puts us way out. And so I just want to, you know, put that out there as well, just in terms of that. And I'm just trying to figure out, what do you need? You know, I certainly hear all the questions and additional information that the board is asking for, but I'm just wondering, is there action we can still take that allow you to get that back to us as well? But I just wanted to say that piece.
Well, I'll tell you what I need and we need. We need your support to do an essential function of leadership and managing a school district. The financial cost of closure from March 13th to the end of school is going to add up to $1.8 million of losses on top of what we incurred during normal operations. And so when you ask what I need, it's like, I need us to take action at some point. I mean, we have brought these to you in December, in February. We know there's a problem. We're bringing it to you tonight. At some point, I'm asking, when can the board take action? That's what I need. That's what we need.
Well, I just want to speak that I'm not saying that I'm not willing to take action. I just think I wanted more answers. I would like this information that you're saying you can get for us, because those are the questions that were raised in this conversation, which is part of the process of understanding what we're doing. I understand that we need to have restructuring. I understand we need to have new systems, but I also understand that people are going to be let go. And so I want to make sure that we've covered all of our bases and we do have a plan, and I know what that plan is. What is that plan? As opposed to this bumping up and these opportunities. I mean, that was a thought that came to mind, but I didn't know, is that possible? So now that there's possibilities for that, you know, I just want to make sure that we've covered all of our options. And in the time frame that we can make a decision. I mean, maybe as a board, we could make the decision at the next board meeting. It depends on when you can get the information to us. I know that it's crucial that we make a decision. So I just, you know, is that too much to ask to get that information by May 12th or what? You know, we're just talking a few weeks. It's not delaying it. And I totally support Ms. Sims Moten and that the sustainability piece. And is this, you know, we want to make sure that we're not, you know, that this is a huge loss financially, that we're losing money every day. But I also want to make sure that I know what is going to happen and how it's going to happen before I can make a decision like that.
No, your request for the information that I just outlined, it's reasonable. I think, you know, time is a weird thing right now. It's like getting workflow done is intense, but I think we will just commit to getting it done. All right. Ms.
Not
Ford.
that I have a skeleton that we've started on this, so we have a pretty good idea what we want and what we want out of the positions. So we could definitely hit the May 12th date.
Okay.
Ms. Ford.
Thanks. I also think that because this is such a terribly difficult time, and I do recognize all the hard work that's gone into helping us understand things along the way, but I have been through, as some of you also have been, a couple very, very difficult times in our economy where layoffs were required. And one of the things I didn't actually see formally being presented, I'd love to ask you to sort of have that ready for the public, is that before you do layoffs, you've made sure you've done everything else you could. And I believe that the district is certain that they have, but I'd love to have it in writing, because I believe that once this gets out into the community members, you know, and I think it hasn't, because this is just formally introduced on Friday and this is Zoom and the world is in a weird place. But once the word gets out, I'm sure that other people will be saying, is there anything else we could do instead of letting people go? And maybe there's not, but I would love to just request that you consider sort of enumerating the things that you considered already before the consideration of layoffs.
I appreciate that.
So we can add a statement to respond to that, but I want to make sure that the board understands that the constraint of that question, the question, have you done everything possible? It's within the boundaries of the food services budget, rules, all of that space. Because it's its own budget, it's got its own income source, and it's got its own operations.
Yes.
Because what I worry about the question is, well, have you considered layoffs in other areas of the district? That's a different funding source. That's the general fund. That's going to hit schools and classrooms. So if you ask,
I do understand that. I do think though that, and we've talked offline, a few of us have talked about this issue about food services often dips into general fund. And probably in most districts, they operate with some funds from the general fund. So I'm not asking for a complete picture of what we might have to do long-term, and I'm not asking for any other program to bail out the food services. I'm just making the point that usually people ask, have you done everything else you could?
Okay.
Thank you. Just one concrete example of that. For example, our numbers could improve. This was given to me by somebody, someone who is a recipient of our meals. It would be so much better if we could pick up the meals after work. Many of us are essential workers. Is it possible to pick up the food at 5? Certainly, potentially, you could get 6,000 more meals a week if that's at all possible. I just bring that up because, again, I haven't gotten an answer about that. I think it's time to move on, but I really appreciate where this conversation is going. But that's sort of the tenor by which I think exploring all options before layoffs would be helpful for us and for the community.
well, so if you're gonna, I'd like our team to respond to that. If you're asking that question, let's take a moment to respond to that.
Matt, you want to answer that question?
Well, so the issue particularly with that is with our agreements we've made with in the MOU with the labor union. And if we were to change employees' shifts dramatically on 30 minutes on each end of what they're currently doing, then that would have to be a separate agreement. Is that correct, John?
Yes, it would have to be agreed to by the union, but also by the employees you're changing. You can't just change an employee's hours.
So that would be troublesome in that alone, but also we're trying to ensure the safety of our current employees by limiting the amount of hours that they're in the kitchen producing, only there to for their essential work, which is producing, distributing, cleaning up after the meals. You know, that's kind of what we're worried about in terms of doing something at that later in the day as well.
And wouldn't it also mean that we would go from a breakfast supper instead of breakfast lunch?
Sure.
So,
I'm just trying to get to yes, feeding more people and saving jobs. So I appreciate that there's MOUs and all that, but it seems worth exploring. Okay, so thank you for answering that.
Ms. Capps, I think Ms. Munoz wanted to say something.
Yes.
Rose, are you?
Ms. Munoz?
I was trying to unmute it. Yes. Yes, I think in terms of, you know, having the information for the next meeting, it would be helpful on the 12th. I think that in terms of the finances of this, you know, and the amount of meals that we have to be looking at what's most efficient and also fiscally, you know, so that we're not losing money, thousands of dollars every day, as difficult as it is. And I appreciate, you know, the input and dedication of my fellow board members so that we do this properly, that we have a good process for that. So I look forward to, you know, the information on the next board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. I think it sounds as though there's consensus to have this be voted on at the next meeting.
Wait, I have a question with regards to prices. Don't we have to either make a motion and vote it down or table it or something like that? Is that what we need to do?
No, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Matsuoka, but I believe we don't take action. And we've done it. We've done it at least once before that I'm aware of.
If no one makes the notice, it doesn't go any further. I mean, makes the motion.
Yeah, yeah. If there's no motion, then you don't take action. Or, I mean, I usually do it by, okay, listen to the 5 people. If there's 3 people that are ready to vote, then somebody makes a motion. But it feels like the majority of you want to wait until May 12th to vote.
Okay, and yeah. So, but I would like for, because we have been talking about these very things, maybe in a comprehensive way. We kind of had, board reports throughout the time. So Ms. Jate, could you please add into this report that's coming on the 12th, all the things that you've done with talking about potential layoffs, all the work that has to be in that report, because it just seems like, I see there's still questions, but I know along the way, some of this information has been provided, perhaps because it was invited in, we different reports over time, perhaps, it's much easier, much harder to, coalesce it all. But if you could do that for me, because we have got to move, and we can't just think about this moment. We have to think for long term, what are we going to do? Because our structural deficiencies is going to hurt us in the end if we don't do something. And I recognize that we need, board members need more information with regards to that. But I just want to implore that, coming from a fiscal piece, I understand it, getting layoffs, having to make those difficult decisions, and knowing that you have to make them at some point. And I appreciate all the comments from our board, and I appreciate this conversation as well.
Okay, with that, I think everybody has spoken. Are we good to move on? Yep, okay. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that. Let's move to action item F4, acceptance of public disclosure of 2020-2021 collective bargaining, AB 1200, Ms. Jate. Oh, sorry, it says Jate there, but I think that's you, Dr. Becchio.
Wait, do I see approval of tentative agreement for SB Unified and SBTA?
I actually asked, yeah, I changed the order because we really should approve the AB 1200 report before we approve the tentative agreement with SBTA.
Well, I hope that's Ms. Jate then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gosh, you caught me off guard. Okay, I'm ready. So good evening, board members. Before you tonight is what they call the AB 1200 document. This document is to inform the board the costs associated with the salary increase that you will hopefully approve later on. There are a few requirements that I want to point out, though. Since the board is asked to approve this increase, we need to take the data of the last approved board meeting to start with. So this is one of the requirements. So that would mean, since if you're approving a 2020-21 increase, then I need to go into the second interim, pull that 2020-21, which is a multi-year, right? Is it the first multi-year? And use that data. And then I go in and we start from that base and we build out the budget. So I wanted you to know that, and just remember that that 2021 budget was approved as a multi-year at second interim, March 10th, before COVID. So I've checked with the county. We were not supposed to make any changes to that from what we know now at COVID. So we're starting as if COVID never happened and all these other changes had never happened. So this document has also been reviewed by the county ed, just to let you know that that's a prerequisite that they are required to do. So as we go through the document, on page 1, this document states what the total cost across all funds are. So this is every single one of our funds on this page 1. Then as you move through, you come to the explanations of what's actually in the agreement that you will be approving later on tonight. So it describes what's in it, and it asks certain questions about health insurance and so on and so forth. So then you get to the first part on 4A, which is the cost of the unrestricted side of the budget. And column 2 is where all the increases happen. Stop me anytime if you have any questions. Then it goes on to the restricted side, and then on page 4C, it is the combination. Then as you proceed, you go through all the other funds, same situation where it's the changes or the cost to the increase is in the middle, column 2. And then on page 5A, you get to the multi-year agreements. So for the years that we've been talking about, the 2021 is second interim. The 2021-22 now has the salary increase. If you approve the increase, we'll move in and roll into the next year of 2021-22 plus step and column and changes to the budget reductions, whatever we talked about in second interim. Then you created a new 2022-23. The reason why we do this is they're asking, are you going to be able to afford this? Maybe you can afford it just for 2021, but can you afford it for the out years? And we show that we can afford this increase. So that was on the unrestricted side. It goes to the restricted side and does the same thing. Then it combines the general fund into the multi-year projections as of unrestricted and restricted. On page 6 is the most important page. And it said, or one of the most important pages, and it basically states, and it's all, you don't answer the question, it's all you enter the information on the yellow document, or yours may not be yellow, but on certain lines, and then it calculates. And it automatically calculated that we will be able to afford this increase for the next 3 years. The next pages are just basic information about, how you're going to fund it and what your increase is per ADA on the second pages, the total cost of all funds on page 9. And then another very important page is page 9A, where it states, how are you going to afford this? What are you going to do to make sure you can afford this? And when we were developing the second interim, we knew that this is probably what was going to happen. So we made reductions in the 2020-21 year to afford this increase. And then the page 10 is just signature pages. So that's the AB 1200. If you have any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none. We need a motion.
So moved.
Ms. Sims Moton made the motion, second by Ms. Ford. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item. I believe that's Dr. Becchio.
All right, good evening, board members. All right, well, Meg, that was very helpful. Thank you for that presentation. And the item before you is the approval of the tentative agreement that we reached with Santa Barbara Teachers Association. And what we included in the agenda item is all the language. So you will see, the salary increase, but then you'll also see a lot of other language that we negotiated over the last several months. And so I'm happy to take any questions that you might have about any of those language, and some of it is related to, either ed services or student services. And so we can address those questions if you have them before you consider approval.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you could just sort of give us a little bit of a picture, not long or anything, just a little picture about any of those agreements that are very different. It seemed like, I couldn't really, since I don't know the schools inside and out, I couldn't really tell if the schedule, for example, for meetings was substantially different, or the prep time elements. You know, can you just help us understand if any of these were very big, very controversial, anything about them?
Sure. So there wasn't really anything extremely controversial. You know, we spent, you know, for example, the industrial tech and culinary classes. Those
Right.
those were really those were pretty quick agreements because of where we usually run those at 32, I believe it is. It went to 28. Not that big of a deal. Special ed teacher prep time was another one where we already in some places are practicing, are already in practice giving teachers some time to deal with their caseloads, and so that one was fairly easy. I'm trying to look down my list here and see. I think, you know, the kindergarten one where we adjusted the kindergarten days. That one took us a little bit more time, but that was to line up the minimum days that kindergarten has with the end of the terms for elementary. But we ended up getting that one done, so that was good. Anyone else want to jump in on anything that was maybe out of the ordinary?
Yeah, I just want to highlight the alignment of the kindergarten. What is it? I'm looking at the language. The kindergarten parent conferences with grades 1 through 6. And Dr. Ramirez has spent a lot of time on this one over 3 or 4 years. And I'm looking at Miss Capps because we talked about this when Oster was a kindergarten.
Yes.
Remember you asked the question, why are the kindergarten parent conferences different than the rest of the school? I said, yeah, we've been asking the same question. It took a long time, but there was some flexibility on both sides to get there. So I'm really grateful for Dr. Ramirez's work, because he met with the kindergarten teachers, all of them, 2 years in a row, I think. And he deserves a pat on the back for this.
Yay. Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. That's amazing work. I can't wait to share that.
And that one was probably the most, you know, that one was probably the most difficult one, or the one that took us the most time. But the rest, many of these were simply, you know, we were in full agreement, and we moved on, and then we spent a little more time on a couple of them just to get the language right, check back with principals, etc.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? That was a good question. Looking around. Okay, seeing none, I need a motion.
So moved.
Okay, Dr. Reed, and I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you so much, Dr. Vecchio, and all the work of the team. Okay, let's see, I'm sorry. Just back to, that would be item F6, which is approval of a resolution of, elimination or reduction of classified service, Dr. Vecchio, and with the explanation, please.
Yes, for sure. So this is really an annual exercise of bringing these layoffs to you. This really has nothing to do with COVID-19. It is a regular occurrence at this April board meeting. The background on it is that we have a number of let's call them soft funded positions. It's either funded by a donation account or funded by a site funding source. And the site needs to approve their plans and also get their budget and approve their plans in order to know whether they can run that position again. So it's generally, most of them are not general fund positions. And so in order to protect our organization, we do have to issue layoff notices to give us the time to then determine whether that money is going to be there, either donated or the site has the funding source to fund the position. And then we will rescind those layoff notices as we find that out and make those determinations. So that is really what most of this list is about. And it really, unfortunate timing, it doesn't really have anything to do with COVID. And many of these folks are used to, because of the nature of their position, they're used to getting this notice each year and then being rescinded and brought back. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but you do have in front of you a resolution that really is what you're voting on, and then it sets the process in motion for us to move down the road on layoff notices.
Thanks for that clarification. Ms. Sims Moton.
Thank you, John. I just had a question. When you talk about soft positions and when people take positions at the beginning, are they aware that it could potentially, it's grant funded or based on the funding that they could, if it's gone away, this position will go away? Is that explained to them at the beginning?
I'm sorry, I missed some of you. I think let me repeat your question. Is that, are the employees notified that this is a soft funded position and that it could go away? Is that was?
Yeah, so, like if it's based on the funding, knowing that, let's say it's for 2 years, at the end of that 2 years, this position could go away. Are they aware of that at the front beginning?
Yeah, I would say that in most cases, or any cases I've ever dealt with, there was an understanding and a notification that those were soft funded positions. Some soft positions might have an employee in it that if there was a layoff, they would move into another position and someone else in lower seniority would be eliminated. So, but that's a general, like I said, probably most of these have received a layoff notice each year just because it's a matter of routine. So like some of these curriculum specialists that are funded out of, probably these are donation funds from the foundations of these schools that then fund these support positions. They're probably used to getting a layoff notice every year and then being brought back.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Ms. Simpson. That was my exact question to Dr. Beck earlier. Any other questions? Okay, I need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2019-20-22, the elimination or reduction of classified services.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Sims Moton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Great. Item 7.
All right, this will be your easiest item of the night. So this is a variable term waiver approval. Basically, we had an FPM finding about one of our teachers who does have a preliminary credential, actually a CTE credential. We need to get the approval for this variable term waiver so that we can cover this teacher for the CLAD that they are still yet to have received. And so that this will take the teacher to the end of the school year. But again, it was a requirement by FPM.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? I move to approve this variable term waiver.
Second.
Dr. Reed, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 8. Let's see, just pulling up a little slowly on my, it's Ms. Chate.
Yes.
Resolution number 2019-20-24, resolution of the board authorizing the issuance of 2020-2021 tax and revenue anticipation notes.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to bring Lacey Preston in on this, and she's going to present this item.
Great, welcome, Lacey.
You're on, Lacey.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, board members and cabinet. We bring you resolution 2019-20-24 to the board to authorize the district to issue tax and revenue anticipation notes, which I will refer to going forward as the TRAN. This is an annual resolution that we bring to you every year to address the district's cash shortfalls during the school year. I don't know if we're able, let me see if I can bring up the graph for you. Give me 1 second. Okay, so this graph shows you what our ending cash balances would be for every month based on if we had a TRAN or without a TRAN. You will notice that in December and April, our cash increases, and that's when we receive our property taxes, which is the majority of our cash flow from the county treasurer. So the green line represents if we issued a TRAN and received $20 million of cash, what our cash balances would be. And the blue line is if we did not issue a TRAN, what our ending cash balances would be. These cash balances are based on worst case scenario. As times are changing and things are being updated, we will also update these cash balances. Currently, this cash balance represents a 0% AV growth, but we're hearing that that's going to end up being more like 3 to 4%. So like I mentioned earlier, as things change, as decisions are made by the board, these cash balances will be updated. We will finalize this cash flow projection after the governor updates his budget for 2021 in May, and then that will determine the amount that we would like to issue. And again, we're aiming to be issuing around $20 million. So with that, I will take any questions that anyone may have.
Any questions, comments? Ms. Sims-Moton.
Hi, Lacey. Thank you for this report. I just had a question. I know we're waiting on the governor's May revise, but I'm also hearing that there could be a potential second revise in August. So are you looking at that as well that may impact this report?
So we plan on getting the money by August, but the resolution that we're presenting to you is to not exceed 30 million. And we do have the option that if things continue to change, that we can go out again and get more cash if needed. And we also have our Fund 17 special reserve that also has cash that we could borrow from. And currently we have 11.5 million in that fund that would also help offset these cash balances.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Good question. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And, we need a motion.
I move approval of the resolution 2019-2024, resolution of, I can't read it all, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. Oh, tax and revenue anticipation notes. Thank you.
Yep.
Second.
I think that was Ms. Ford. Thank you so much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we are now moving on to job descriptions. Mr. Matsuoka, we have two back-to-back. Approval of job description, MacArthur Fellow in Residence.
Yes, so these next 4 items are package. And so I'll just go through going off the agenda. The first one is a job description for, I'm just going to name the person. It's for Amir Abushair, who's been really the longtime lead person of the DPEA Engineering Academy. And that has been a long conversation with Amir and the DPEF board, probably 18 months long, off and on, and we explored different ideas. That job description is a management position. And the reason for that, it allows us some flexibility that would be difficult if he stays in the teacher role. And I'm gonna skip pulling those up and sharing them. I'm assuming that the board has read them. Be glad to pull them up if the board wants to examine any of the first 2. So that's a job description specifically around Amir and his role. It's a cool title, MacArthur Fellow in Residence. I know 2 MacArthur, what's the title? Award winners?
Genius Award.
Yeah, Genius Award. So Amir's one, and one of my chemistry students got one as an artist of all things. And so it's a pretty rare person that receives that award. And I think we can all say that Amir has living out those dreams. The second item, item number 10, is we wanted to establish some guardrails, guidance about Amir's ability to do extra work for the DePeef Foundation. We see some separation of roles and responsibilities where it's allowable for him to earn funds, earn money during summer, during weekends. It is related to his role as the engineer in residence, so we wanted to have some agreements and clarifications about what's okay and where he should not go. And so that's the next item. So those two are tied together. Any questions on those two? And then I'm going to go back to the first one and have the board vote. Any questions about the job description?
Seeing none.
Okay. So why don't we have the board vote on item number 9, job description, MacArthur Fellow in Residence.
So moved. Dr. Reed with the motion.
I second it.
Ms. Munoz with the second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. We can move on now.
Any questions about the MOU regarding MacArthur Fellow?
No questions. Do we have a motion?
So
Okay, Dr. Reed, I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks all. Okay, Mr. Matsuoka, please continue. Thanks.
Okay, for the last two items, share my screen. Is that working for everybody?
Yes.
All right. So I just wanted to put this screen up for the public because this is a really significant commitment on the part of the DePeef board and all of the fundraising that they have done. So as part of the next item, the MOU, it requires a letter of commitment to fundraising before the district will go out to bid on this project. And so there's the numbers. The total project budget is about $15.9 million. And the DePeef board is committing to fundraise and contribute $6,307,000 and some change. That, just kind of pause and wrap your brain around that dollar amount. And to show their goodwill, they already transferred over $500,000 towards the design of the facility. So you heard Sandy Seal, I forget, it was quite a while ago, with Amir saying, we've raised the money and we are committed to this project. So I just wanted you to see the letter and the action. I'm asking the board to approve the reception of this letter.
Any questions or comments on the letter? Okay. I think we're all on board here. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Sims Moten, seconded. Oops.
Second.
Oh, I think that was Ms. Ford. Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Ms. Matsuoka.
Did I lose my screen sharing? I don't need screen sharing for the last one. So the last one is the most important document. Actually, I will share my screen. So this MOU has been in production also for a long time, and it is going to supersede the one that was gonna expire in a year. It's gonna start July 1, 2020, go through 2025. It outlines the responsibilities, relationships, commitments of the district and DePeef around the future facility and also the vision of the Institute. And so this Institute is going to be, it's going to be many things. It's going to be a museum, a learning museum. It's going to be a production facility for science projects. It's going to be a gathering space for the school and the community. And there's just amazing visions of what DePeef, Amir, and Emily have for this facility. It is extensive. There were many hands that created this. I want to thank the DePeef board members, the 4 of them that spent much time with us. You should also know that this has been reviewed and approved by our attorneys Craig Price and Sita Torres. So there's the MOU that is an agreement between the district and DPEF. Is there any language in there that you have any questions about?
No. Anybody? Thank you. I mean, and Mr. Matsuoka, I know this represents so much work on your part and a lot of other folks, but I just want to thank you for presenting it in this thorough way and keeping us up to speed as this progressed.
Yes, this was on my bucket list before retirement.
Yes, well, congratulations. Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that you have spearheaded this, Mr. Matsuoka, and we've been brought along the way, and it's exciting, and I think it's an amazing opportunity for our students, and I just want to thank you for all of the hard work that you've put forward on this.
My pleasure.
Excellent. So we need a motion to close this out.
So moved.
Dr. Reed.
A second.
Second by Ms. Munoz. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. That brings us, I believe, if I can pull up my agenda, to the end of our action agenda, which means we need a break. I need a break. 5 minutes fast. We're almost at 10 o'clock, but if we could just take a quick break and be back before 10 o'clock for our last two remaining items.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Sorry to catch you there, Mr. Matsuoka, but I think I'm going to turn it over to you for the first report of the discussion agenda, which is, I'm sorry, this is Ms. Carey and Dr. Ramirez for the first reading and discussion of Board Policy 6171.
Yes, good evening, Board. Once again, Ms. Capps. Wanted to let you know that on this item, we are bringing this forward, Ms. Carey and I, just as a desire to update our board policies and also keep current on very important guidance relative to a significant portion of our federal funding, which falls under Title I programs. Virtually all of our schools in the district fall under this policy, with the exception of one, which is La Colina. All other programs are either school-wide or targeted assistance programs within our district. So with that said, would like to turn it over to you as a board to ask questions as we seek your guidance for this revision to board policy.
Thank you, Dr. Ramirez. Any questions from the board? No, I didn't have any either when I reviewed it. Okay, great. With that, it's just a report at this point. I appreciate it coming forward as a report with then action on a future agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last item here. Mr. Matsuoka, COVID report.
Board agenda about how we're doing with COVID-19 pandemic. So the strategy this board meeting is I looked backwards since our last board meeting, and also there's a little bit of a glimpse forward. So I just created material that's mostly for the public's sake. The board's informed about every one of these, except for the food service data. That was new information for you. So I'm not going to go through each section. You've hopefully had a chance to read it this afternoon. The one part that I will comment, let's pause on planning for next school year. I want to have some comments at the end about that. But HR, budget, food service, teaching and learning, does the board have any questions? We also talked about, Ms. Capps and I, about a moderate level of questioning.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the synthesis because I know this represents a ton of work across the board for staff and the team. So thank you. Any questions from the board? I know it's 10 o'clock here, but this is extremely important. So I don't want to short shrift any questions you might have after receiving this report. Ms. Ford.
Of course, I had to have a question. I just wondered, Mr. Matsumoka, if you would consider, I really liked hearing about the FAQs about the grading, but sometimes FAQs are hard to access for lots of folks. And I just wonder, I'll just put it out there that I think it would be cool if there was a Zoom town hall about the FAQs on grading, or maybe even a weekly update on COVID-19 on KEYT. It seems like they're looking for lots of stories and angles since the news and the sports are non-existent really, except for COVID-19. Anyway, I think there's lots of possibilities and opportunities to get the word out about different things, and just would love to consider those.
Okay, yeah, thanks for the ideas. The FAQ is, it's written up, it's pretty much ready to go out. I think Sean is going to post it. Is it tonight to staff or tomorrow to staff?
Tonight to staff, tomorrow to community is what we anticipate. We need to make sure it's translated. And we did want to put it on our webpage so that if there's updates, we can be directing people to the same place. And it should be pretty accessible there with drop downs for the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Mine is about the upcoming school year, so I'll wait since we're taking that separately. Other questions? Okay. Maybe we can talk about the future and what you wanted to address there, Matsuoka.
Broadly, my goal was for us to start talking about next year around May 1st, but we just needed to have some breathing room. And it finally popped up yesterday in cabinet that a cabinet member said, hey, when are we gonna start planning for next year? And we're ready to start wrapping our heads around next year. The tension around this, and I've felt it ever since pre-pandemic, the week before, and then the last 6 weeks, is to do the right kind of planning at the right pace. Because if you plan for the details around a scenario and that doesn't materialize, you have to set aside a lot of work. These are, by the way, these are my initial thoughts. We haven't had a chance to talk about it in cabinet, but it is starting to percolate at the county level to start thinking of 3 different scenarios, and there may be 4 or 5. But the 3 that I've thought about is that our current conditions of stay at home and distance learning continues. That's a possibility in August. The science side of this, of a vaccine or the antibody test and all of that, is still yet to be determined. I think the scenario that when schools open that we're probably going to operate on is the middle one, where we operate schools but under social distancing conditions. Now, our schools were not built to separate students by 6 feet. I mean, just think about a high school classroom with 34 high school kids crammed into some of the ones that we have in our high schools. But those are the things that we'll have to start thinking about. The third is schools are in full operation. I look forward to that day, but I don't know how fast that's going to happen. And so what we're going to begin is a conversation around probably the first 2 scenarios is what if we had to continue this distance learning model for a few more months, but especially thinking about how do we run schools under social distancing. And there are going to be some big challenges around that because our facilities are not built to spread kids out that much. But I know that our parents, our community look forward to the day when our schools can run and we can have kids physically among us, it'll be a different rhythm and pace. I know that our parents look forward to that day when they can send their kids back to school. And I bet every kid out there looks forward to the day that they can go back to school. So those are the beginning thoughts. This is starting to emerge at the county level. I barely had time to process Gavin Newsom's comment about we should start school in like summer. The ramifications of that are just so vast and broad. So that's initial thinking. Those thoughts are honestly about 36 hours old. So welcome any board comments or questions.
Yeah, Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it would possibly be more of a hybrid model where you might have remote learning and then you might have sort of phases of students. In other words, small groups that you would have a small group in the morning, a small group in the early afternoon, then afternoon. And if there was a phasing of groupings, the possibility, I think, for student really meeting our achievement gap, attempting to really address the achievement gap has a lot of possibilities, because you're working in small groups and you're providing support to students in these settings that I think really it could change the way we look at education. But with that said, I'm wondering if we did phase in, and we did like the phase in model where we had these small groupings, would that mean that we would be needing to hire more teachers? Because if we did that, we would need to have teachers a teacher couldn't teach all three phases.
So one of the assumptions that we have to design around is our income is not changing. The number of teachers that we can have, I mean, we can't double our teacher workforce. So we're going to have to be really thoughtful about that. But I agree with you. This is blended learning. It's rotational models. It's just the rotation. One of the stations is at home, which now becomes flipped classrooms. I mean, it's really going to be, I'm kind of excited about all the models that we get to explore and test, but there will be challenges around how do we use our teachers, I would say, work calendar to the right impact, because we can't ask them to teach like morning shift and afternoon shift, and we can't ask them to teach year round. So that is a physical constraint. But no, I appreciate the ideas, because that's where I think we're going to land some models.
I also just wanted to say that I appreciate your COVID reports. I mean, I think it's good for us to sort of get a sense what's being impacted, what's happening as we go along. And I know it certainly takes time and to bring it forward, but I appreciate them as we move forward.
Yeah, I find that twice a week right now is pretty important, because if I wait 5 days, a lot of stuff piles up.
That's good. Other questions? Yeah, Ms. Simpson.
I just had a comment. I just think about, as you think about the models, how, through this process, people have figured out what they need to do actually and what they can and can't do without. Because what we're finding, our initial need was, our initial, like, for instance, at First Five, we're saying we're going to need all this childcare, right? Because of the schools closing and all different things, and childcare providers closing. And we didn't really have that need the level of need was because parents were at home. And so I wonder if some of that may shift in terms of the distance learning, that parents may be at home now, right? In terms of that, how that may affect even just getting back to school, when people figure out I'm kind of used to this. I don't have to have the cost of going out, all those different things. So I wonder how that may impact it too, going forward.
It would, here's an idea in response to that. It's almost like, could we build a master schedule, so to speak, that includes these cohorts of parents as they are, okay, I got to go to work today. Okay, I can stay home and like help the home learning model proceed. So again, that one of those rotations at home could be a small group learning experience that assumes, that there's enough health in our children, but that parents can kind of cooperate. It's like a parent co-op for homeschooling. That would be an interesting model. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be like the carpool, but school cool, school pool, something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Okay. Again, I think because the note. Oh, Ms. Ford, of course. There you go. I'm just kidding.
No, I was trying to tell you that Ms. Munoz had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. She's my screen here. Ms. Munoz. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I was going to say the partnership, the partnership with the parents and what has come on, what has happened in terms of the learning, the dialogue, the sharing with the parents and the students and grandparents and such. I think it's exciting. It's something positive that can come out of this.
Yeah, I appreciate the thread of this conversation. I hadn't really thought about how our parents can be part of that school model, but what a great opportunity. And we've talked about parent engagement forever, and parents as first teachers of their children and being engaged with literacy. So all kinds of opportunities ahead. Really good.
Yeah, I'll just add that my son and daughter-in-law, have a 9-month-old baby, and they both work remotely. And it's been, if anybody is the happiest in this world right now, it's them, because they are actively involved. They didn't have to worry about sending her to daycare, though they were struggling with that, how they were going to afford it, all of those different things. And now they have the best of both worlds, and they're working with her, and she's just learning right and left, of course. I think she's brilliant. But I'm just saying, it's clearly a situation where there can be so many benefits, too. And so I guess it's nice to shed some positive lights and lenses on this situation, because we are also under the pall of all of it too. But I do think there's a lot to be said about the light that it's shedding on new opportunities in learning and connecting with our parents.
I have to agree. I have heard from a number of people that it may turn out that many kids take a gap year instead of going to college. And so we might end up having a lot of young people who may have been pretty successful academically, who may be looking to have some service hours or to help in our schools or to help at their homes, etc. So I think there's no other way for us as educators to look other than to look at this as an opportunity that we'll make the best of, and we may come out of this with some amazing things happening.
Good.
That's good. Okay, on that note, I just want to make sure on the screens here we're good. Thank you for that report. Thank you for a good meeting. I believe we're ready to move forward and head to our last agenda item, which is always to discuss our next meeting, which is Tuesday, May 12th. We do have a special meeting, as I mentioned at the top, on May 7th, but that is a closed session, a superintendent search meeting. The public is welcome to provide public comment in closed session. And with that, I move to adjourn this meeting today on April 28th, and want to thank everybody involved. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Bye.